Welcome, welcome. This is Torah Portions here on Kingdom of Context. This is part of our Torah Apologetics series. So we hope to help you with some fun and practical, easily researchable answers to share with your friends and family when they ask you, hey, why are you not working on Saturday anymore? You used to work on Saturday all the time. And then you can express to them, hey, well, this is a day that the Father asked us to take off once a week, enjoy some rest, recharge, focus on Him. And we got 6 days of the week to work. So this is the Sabbath today, and so I just want to encourage everyone that is celebrating the Sabbath, happy feast day, because that's what it's called, Leviticus 23, 1-3. So hopefully everyone here is ready for a fun breakdown of Numbers 13 through 15. Those are the chapters we're going to be covering today. We got some fun information to review in those. Also, just quickly, I wanted to share with everybody this is a need that's come to our attention. It's a single mother. We're not actually doing a fundraiser yet. I know that in the past we've done fundraisers for women, specifically single mothers, and need this particular young lady. My wife and I have known for quite some time through Facebook, and she's never had a medical issue before. She's never done a GoFundMe or anything like that. But her name is Rhianna Schuetz. I think I said that right, Rhianna Schuetz, and she was diagnosed recently last month with triple negative breast cancer that's growing fast into her lymph nodes, and she's needing to cover the cost of basic therapy. So for the community, it's not a big cost, but for a single mother, it is a big cost. So if the Father puts it on your heart to actually extend and reach out to her, the link is in the video description of this video that you're watching, and that way you can go to her GoFundMe page and you can decide whether or not you want to help her out with her medical costs. That's basically what it boils down to. So I really appreciate everybody considering that, because she's a sweet mother, a sweet woman, and a believer, and she's in need. So also, obviously, we want to pray for her, but there's the practical ways that we can help her as well. So, guys, I just want to thank you for joining me this morning. I'm excited. We get to jump into the Word. We get to look at the Bible and dissect it, and there's a lot of fun stuff going on in the Word today. I want to say hello to people that are already in the chat. Anthony Dickinson is here. Bonnie Blaylock. Cliff is here. Miss Marsha's back. Hannibal is here. Wendy Russell. Arc Builder CCMC. Robert Daniels. Terry C. Todd. Annalise Edgy. Obi Kenobi. Sharon Myron. G.R. Cleve. Welcome, everybody. Nikki Latimer's here. Welcome, welcome. Beetlejuice is here. I think that's Miss Marsha's daughter. And Colin Crockett, Anita Vega, Elsa de Oliveira Ricci. I think I said that right. The Lion Within Us. Welcome back, brother. Blue Doves. And a whole bunch of others. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome. And Alfonso Negrete. Welcome back, brother. So today we're jumping into the book of Numbers. So we're picking up where we left off recently with the children of Israel. They've come out of the Exodus. Now they're actually they're several months into their journey, and the Father is about to try to take them to the edge of the land so they can check it out, because this is the land that He wants to bring them into. This is the land that their forefathers, Jacob, the actual guy that given the name Israel, Jacob and his sons and grandsons, they all came down from this land previously, a couple hundred years previously. So now here's the Father bringing the Israelites, as they've grown to a massive number of over probably 2 million after all women and children are counted. Now He's trying to bring them back into that same territory, which is culturally in their time it was called the land of Canaan, but originally this was the land that was given to Shem by Noah. So this is why the Canaanites are there, and they tried to fully take over this land back when Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob lived there. So each Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had their own little fights with different Canaanite kings. But since Jacob and his boys went down to Goshen when Joseph was vice ruler over Egypt, the Canaanites basically took over fully of this area. And so now they knew the promise. And I couldn't find the actual clip. If anyone in the audience knows what I'm talking about, there's an actual passage in Josephus, and I believe it's in Antiquity of the Jews. Now Josephus comes to be an historian, so we don't take everything he says as 100%. We should just say test all things, right? Like every book you read, you want to test it. There's some things that Josephus says about theology that I don't agree with, but from a historical standpoint, he claims as far as just detailing, movements of peoples and places. He claims that the Canaanites of the land knew that the descendants of Abraham were going to be coming back because they knew the prophecy. Everyone in the region knew the prophecy, and that's why they had fortified their cities so well and were ready for a fight, basically. And so this is actually what kind of the scenario that the children of Israel are about to step into as Moses and Aaron leads them into the edge of the promised land to check it out. So we're going to jump into this. It's here in Numbers 13. In verse 1, and the Lord said to Moses, "Send out for yourselves men to spy out the land of Canaan, which I'm given to the Israelites. From each of their fathers' tribes, send one man who is a leader among them." So at the consent of Moses, Moses sent them out from the wilderness of Paran. All the men were leaders of the Israelites, and these were their names: from the tribe of Reuben, Shemua the son of Zakur; from the tribe of Simeon, Shaphat son of Hori; from the tribe of Judah, Caleb son of Jephunneh; from the tribe of Issachar, Igal son of Joseph; from the tribe of Ephraim, Hosea son of Nun, this later becomes Joshua; and from the tribe of Benjamin, Palti son of Raphu; from the tribe of Zebulun, Gadiel son of Zodi; from the tribe of Manasseh, which is a part of the tribe of Joseph, Gadi son of Suzi; from the tribe of Dan, Amiel son of Gamali; from the tribe of Asher, Seter son of Michael; from the tribe of Naphtali, Nabi son of Vasti; and from the tribe of Gad, Guel son of Maki. These were the names of the men Moses sent to spy out the land. Moses gave to Hosea son of Nun the name Joshua. When Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan, he told them, "Go up through the Negev and into the hill country, see what the land is like, and whether its people are strong or weak, few or many." Now, guys, I know a lot of people, when we go read through these names like this, and you're like, man, why does it take the time to list out the leaders of the clans that went on this journey and everything? Well, it's because 10 of them are going to die in a few minutes. So maybe that brings some relevance to why the names are hard to pronounce. It seems boring to read through them. You're basically listing off 12 men. 10 of them are not going to live through the story I'm about to read. So that's why he's telling you these are the people that are a part of this, and we're going to see how these people behave and what happens as a result of it. So it's kind of interesting. Numbers 13, 19 through 23 says, "In this land where there is the land where they live, good or bad." This is Moses asking these scouts, also called spies, these scouts to go into the land and say, "Hey, give me a status report on this land. Is it good to live in or bad? Are the cities where they dwell open fortification? Are the cities where they dwell open camps or fortifications?" So do you guys know the difference there? The idea of what I was just referencing about the historical account of Josephus, where he claims that all the cities of the Amorites, the Hittites, the Kenizzites, the Gibeonites, the Ammonites, the Edomites, all those ites, the Jebusites, the Canaanites, all of them fortified their cities. This is why we're going to see, in Jericho, in the book of Joshua, we go up to Jericho and it's a huge fortified city. They did that because they knew the children of Abraham were promised to come back to this land because it was originally given to them. They were there by sedition, which means they stole land that was not theirs. They usurped the authority of Noah, passed down to give that land to Shem, and one of the descendants of Ham, which was one of the sons of Ham, and a guy named Canaan, he came in and took that land. That land was not given to him. So this is why it's culturally called the land of Canaan. It should have been called the land of Shem. Interesting, huh? So Moses is trying to get some feedback here. He wants to know if they're ready for war or if they're at peace. Okay. Verse 20, "Is the soil fertile or unproductive? Are there trees in it or not? Be courageous and bring back some of the fruit of the land. It was the season for the first ripe grapes." So they went up and spied out the land from the wilderness of Zin as far as Rehob toward Lebo-Hamat. They went up through the Negev and came to Hebron, where Ahiman, Shashi, Talmai, the descendants of Anak, dwelled. It had been built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt. When they came to the valley of Eshcol, they cut down a branch with a single cluster of grapes, which they carried on a pole between two men. They also took some pomegranates and figs. The place was called the brook of Eshcol, because the cluster of grapes which the children of Israel cut down from there. And they returned from searching the land after the 40 days. And they went and came to Moses and to Aaron, to all the congregation of the children of Israel, unto the wilderness of Paran, to Kadesh, and brought back word to them and unto all the congregation, and showed them the fruit of the land. And they told them, and they said, "We come to the land where you sent us. Surely it flows with milk and honey. This is its fruit." And nevertheless, the people that be strong that dwell in the land, and the cities are walled and very great. And moreover, we saw the children of Anak there, and the Amalekites dwell in the land of the south, and the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites dwell on the mountains, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea, by the coast of the Jordan. Caleb stilled the people before Moses and said, "Let us go up at once and possess it, for we are all well able to overcome it." But the men that went up with them said, "We are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we." And they brought up an evil report of the land which they had searched unto the children of Israel, saying, "The land through which we have gone to search it, it is a land that eats up the inhabitants thereof. And all the people that we saw therein are men of great stature. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants. And we were in our sight as grasshoppers, so we were in their sight." So this is interesting. The famous story. A lot of us are aware of this idea. They go in and they see fortified cities, people prepared for war. They see huge produce, which is fitting because they saw huge men. So you guys remember us talking in prior episodes when we would talk about how, especially if you've watched our Honor of Kings series, if you watch my Investigating Babylon series on my Kingdom Cast channel, you've probably heard me talk multiple times about this idea that there's more than one way to create a giant. So the book of Enoch, curiously enough, gives us strong clues and indicators to how the Watchers created giants through women, as far as they impregnated women, and what was birthed grew to be of giant stature. So we see that reoccurring after the flood. And there's this big debate about, oh my goodness, does that mean more angels came down and impregnated women? Because the first group of angels, they were locked away, right? So then, but of course, Azazel, it didn't say that he took a wife, and he wasn't locked away. He made it through the flood. He's still out tempting people, running around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. So, but it didn't say that he took a wife and had kids by them. So why did these giants start showing back up? Well, I've tried to express this in times past in the book of Jubilees, chapter 8, verses 1 through 4. You see this descendant of Shem, long-standing descendant of Shem. His name is Kenan. I guess you want to say it like that. Canaan. Depends on how you want to say it, translated from the Greek. But he finds the writings of the Watchers pertaining to part of their occult practices. And he is a cousin in the family of Nimrod. Okay, so this is where, and Nimrod is mentioned in that same passage in verses 7 and 8. He gives one of his daughters to the descendants of Ruah, I think it was, either Peleg or Ruah. So they were intermarrying. The family of Ham and the family of Shem were intermarrying and unfortunately creating apostasy. And this is where even Abraham has to get pulled out of that, because Abraham is of the lineage of Shem. Father's trying to maintain a pure priesthood. So as a result of all this, this mass rebellious occultic behavior begins to arise again after the flood. And a part of that cultic behavior, and including all forms of witchcraft and looking to the omens of the stars, which is a part of their astrology and worshiping false gods, also includes pharmakia. And a part of that pharmakia is the cutting of roots, where you can manipulate how big things grow through the 5 different growth hormones found in the roots of plants and trees. So here we are, and then the land of Canaan, they see giants, and they also see giant produce. It's par for the course. It makes sense. Big men need big calorie counts every day. They need big sources of food. So it would make sense that they would have to carry an entire cluster of grapes back on a pole to show people, when it should be something you can just carry in your hand. So this way you have, it doesn't mention big animals, but I wouldn't be surprised if they also had big beast-like animals as well that they genetically modified also. So this is why, a lot of people have talked today about, is it good that we're doing genetically modified produce in our farms? I say 100% no. The same people that push for genetically modified produce in our farms also are part of agendas to depopulate humanity and also push for genetically modified humans across the earth. So I would not be surprised as we continue to lead up to the return of the Messiah, just like the Messiah prophesied, it would be like the days of Noah, where we're gonna see giants return, and we're gonna see large produce return and large animals return, because they have to have sustenance to feed the large beings, the large giants. So that's just my thought. It would make perfect sense to me, and it's not impossible. It's literally just part of a manipulation of what the Father already made. So it's something to consider. Point is, post-flood, several hundred years, children of Israel, they're running into the same practices of Babylon, because remember, Babylon is extending its reach and power all throughout. They're all following the same false gods. All these clans that we're running into in the Canaanites, they're all following the same false gods. They're Baal worshippers, Molek worshippers. We're going to read about that here in just a little bit. So that was chapter 13, but let's go into some companion passages real quick in Joshua chapter 11 to give us a little bit more well-rounded idea of what's going on in this region and what's happening here. Joshua 11, 21 to 23. And Joshua came at that time and cut off the Anakim from the hill country, from Hebron, from Debur, from Anab, and from all the hill country of Judah, and from all the hill country of Israel. Joshua devoted them to destruction with their cities. There was none of the Anakim left in the land of the people of Israel, except for, which is only in Gaza, in Gath, and in Ashdod did some remain. So Joshua took the whole land, according to all that the Lord had spoken to Moses. And Joshua gave for an inheritance to Israel according to their tribal allotments, and the land had rest from war. So the big question, I know that the wording can be a little confusing, right? Joshua took the whole land, except for where the Philistines resided, except for these areas of Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod. So he didn't take the whole land. I know that it takes the whole land that he was asked to at that time. He pushed back the giants, back to the sons of Anak, back to their own establishments. So here on the map here, we have two different, pretty much a Joshua era map in some of the ideas of where the Philistines are and where these cities are. So the cities that were just mentioned, you have Ashdod, Gaza, and Gath. Okay, some of you guys may remember this idea of Gath and why it's so important, because we're actually going to see this city of Gath, which is kind of deep into the territory of what the Israelites are trying to advance into. 1 Samuel 17:4, this is where Goliath came from. There went a champion out of the camp of the Philistines named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits in a span. This is the guy that David had to fight. We also see in 2 Samuel 21, 15 through 22, there was war again between the Philistines and Israel, and David went down together with his servants, and they fought against the Philistines. David grew weary, and Ishbi-Benob, one of the descendants of the giants, whose spear weighed 300 shekels of bronze, and who's armed with a new sword, he thought to kill David. But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, came to his aid and attacked the Philistine and killed him. Then David's men swore to him, "You shall no longer go out with us to battle, lest you quench the lamp of Israel." And all they're saying to David is, bro, you started lacking in the battle. You may not be cut out for this anymore. And I'm thinking this is at the end of David's life and campaign, so he's kind of older. So point is, the other guys are still ready to fight and take on giants. David's already getting tired. So, I mean, David had a lot of great military campaigns, but I think at this point in his life, he's losing his vigor because he's getting older. So he's becoming a liability, and they don't want to lose their king. But can you imagine, like, your actual president going to battle with you? Can you imagine? Can you imagine if George Bush actually went to the Iraq War, put on a helmet, grabbed an M4, went out to the battlefield? You'd never see that in modern day. It's amazing. So anyway, so verse 18, it says, after this, there was war again with the Philistines at Gob. And by the way, that word Gob is strangely, I tried to look this up. And between the Septuagint and the Masoretic and various translations, it seems to be that some people choose to translate it as Gob, and other times they translate it as Gath, but apparently it's the same place. So it says, then Sibbecai the Hushathite struck down Saph, who was one of the descendants of the giants. And there was again war with the Philistines at Gob, and Elhanan, the son of Jair-Oregim, the Bethlehemite, he struck down Goliath the Gittite, the shaft of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. And by the way, this Elhanan character, son of Jair-Oregim, the Bethlehemite, one of the translations says that he was a embroiderer. So he wasn't even a warrior. This dude was just like, he's a seamstress. But he was able to take out a giant. It's because most of the men went to war. All the men that were qualified could go to war. Verse 20 says, there was again war at Gath. There was a man of great stature who had 6 fingers on each hand, 6 toes on each foot, 24 in number, and he also was descended from the giants. And when he taunted Israel, Jonathan, the son of Shimei, David's brother, struck him down. So that's not Jonathan, son of Saul. That's going to be one of David's nephews. And verse 22 says, these 4 were descended from the giants in Gath, and they fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servants. So that means Goliath is already dead, but the other 4 brothers, they are killed later on in David's life. It's very interesting. Now, some translations, as we're going to read here in a minute, and from Chronicles, some translations actually, instead of saying the giants in Gath, they call it Rapha. which I don't know if that was the name of the patriarch giant in Gath, and his name was Rapha. And then other translations just say, well, he was a giant, so they descended from the giants. It's interesting. There's some conflicting, seemingly conflicting, but it's just interesting the way they've chosen to translate it between 2 Samuel and Chronicles. But let's look into it real quick. 1 Chronicles 20, this is part of our companion passage. It says, in the springtime, at the time when kings march out to war, Joab led out the army and ravaged the land of the Ammonites. Joab was the general of David. He came to Rabbah and besieged it, but David remained in Jerusalem, and Joab attacked Rabbah and demolished it. Then David took the crown from the head of their king. It was found to weigh a talent of gold and was set with precious stones, and it was placed on David's head. And David took a great amount of plunder from the city. David brought out the people who were there and put them to work with saws, iron picks, and axes. And he did the same to all the Ammonite cities. Then David and all his troops returned to Jerusalem. You guys, what's interesting about this? Well, let me finish reading this last passage, and I'll start breaking down some things. 1 Chronicles 20, 4-8 says, sometime later, war broke out with the Philistines at Gezer. And at that time, Sibbecai the Hushite killed Sippai, a descendant of the Rephaim, and the Philistines were subdued. Once again, there was a battle with the Philistines, and Elhanan, son of Jair, killed Lami, the brother of Goliath the Gittite, the shaft of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. And there was still another battle at Gath, where there was a man of great stature with 6 fingers in each hand, 6 toes in each foot, 24 in all. He too was descended from Rapha. And when he taunted Israel, David, the son of David's brother Shimei, killed him. So these descendants of Rapha and Gath fell at the hands of David and his servants. So guys, if we look closely here, did you guys notice in the first part of this 1 Chronicles chapter 21-3, after they besieged Rabbah and demolished it, David took the crown from the head of the king? Well, in the Septuagint, it actually expounds upon who the king was and what was going on here. And apparently his name was Molek. So David took the crown from Molek, their king, off his head. Now, I'm not saying that David killed Molek, or like the actual Molek, which I believe to be another version of Baal, and which is just a figure representation of ancient Nimrod. Nimrod was long dead by this time David was alive. But I'm saying it would be commonplace for the kingdoms of that time in the past to name their kings, to give their kings the monikers of the gods they worshipped. So, I mean, this is why we see some of the kings being deified and some of the other kings having the same name over and over. Like there's multiple Nebuchadnezzars, multiple Dariuses, multiple Sargons, multiple, you know what I mean? So this is the way that there was some kings named Sin, some kings named Baal Zephon, different things they would call themselves in as the king, because they were the mouthpiece of the gods they worshipped. So therefore, this particular king, they called Molek. It says he took the crown off of their king's head, and the weight of it was found to be a talent of gold. On it were precious stones and placed on the head of David. Do you guys know a talent of gold is 75 pounds? 75 pounds, guys. So that means I don't think that David wore this thing for a long time. I think they just set it on his head like as a look at this thing, look how big this thing is. You want to set it on your head? So you guys remember the spies come back in Numbers 13. They scout out the land of Canaan. The same people, the same group of Canaanites that David 400 or 500 years later has to still fight and try to get rid of, because Joshua only beat them back so far. And they still have giants with them, and they still have big things to accommodate the giants. Even the crowns on their heads. Can you guys, usually a crown is like less than 5 pounds. If it's true gold, it may be, maybe 10 pounds at most, but a 75-pound crown, that's a big boy. That's a big giant. So I don't think David actually wore it in any regard. I think they just tried to place it on his head for the moment, as like, wow, look at this, because he would be the only one that would be appropriate to place it on his head. They wouldn't want to place it on someone else's head, because it would be like a sense of mutiny. It would be disrespectful to the king that was there fighting with them. So anyway, the point is, you still, just like in Numbers 13, they go into the land, they see giants, and they see big things to accommodate for the giants. You're seeing the same thing here several hundred years later with David. Still giants, still big things to accommodate for these giants. So I think this is pretty fascinating to me. All right, guys. So as we always do, I'm going to go ahead and drop the studio link if anybody wants to come in and talk about the chapter we just read. The link in the chat. And I'm going to put it on a banner real quick. Okay, so if you want to be on camera, you want to ask me any questions about what we just read or talk about some of the things that we just discussed, the call-in link is both in the chat and it's at the bottom of the screen scrolling. And I'll give you a few minutes if you want to do that. And guys, I see people trying to ask questions about things not having to do with today's Torah portion. We're still in the middle of the Torah portion. So try to hold any questions that might pertain to some other topic. I'll try to address those at the end of the broadcast, okay? Hey, and Pastor Nate's here. Hey, brother, how you doing? Bless you too, brother. So essentially, we've got this idea of in Numbers 13, these dudes that go in, there's 12 of them sent by Moses that go in. Out of the 12, only 2 come back and believe they can actually do what the Father said they can do. The other 10, they don't believe it. So you're gonna have issues here. You're gonna have a problem with, like, wait a minute, what's going on? Where's their faith? Because we're gonna see, like, it gets way beyond just them saying we're afraid because there's giants there. It goes way beyond that. If they were simply afraid, Father can deal with that. You have courageous men out of the group of people that are afraid rise up to lead the people. That's the way leadership works. It's the way it always works. But it gets a little bit more severe than just these guys saying, oh, we're afraid. They actually try a full-on mutiny. So let's give it just a few minutes. If anybody wants to call in, you're welcome to do so. If not, I'm going to move into 14. And okay, I appreciate you, brother. Planting in Yahweh, Luis Pereira. Appreciate the super chat, brother. Thank you so much. Bless you. Tom, talking about the different names there. Yeah, I mean, it even says in the passage that we looked at that in verse 13 that Moses, before they set out, Moses gave Yehoshua, son of Nun, the name Joshua, which I think is interesting. This is in verse 16. After it lists off all the leaders, and it already listed off Hoshea's name, and then it says that Moses gave Hoshea the name Joshua, which it's interesting. I think that's wonderful. There's a lot there to unpack as far as any possible allusions or prophetic implications that I don't know if Moses knew something we didn't at that time. I personally believe that Moses had the writings of Enoch with him, so I think that he understood. But I don't know if he had the original writings of Enoch or the leftover writings of Enoch that we have today, because a lot of you guys probably see my breakdown on the book of Enoch, and it's a whole bunch of manuscripts that are put together, like 6 of them, but they're not complete manuscripts. So we don't have the original writings as far as the fullness of them. We have scribal copies that are pieces of what's left over through history. And those pieces are the same ones preserved from Ethiopia to the Greek and Latin, as well as verified in Aramaic found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So unfortunately, we don't have the fullness of all the writings of Enoch, but in my understanding of researching Jubilees and the history of these manuscripts, the books of the fathers that Levi carried with them into Goshen, I think Moses and Aaron and their family lineage did have access to the fullness of the writings of Enoch. And so therefore they would have, maybe there's a reason why he chose Hoshea to rename him as Yehoshua. So I think it's interesting. Yes, he did. He got a great glimpse of the heavenly tabernacle. Richard, first, I'm not sure what your question is, brother. You have to expound a little bit more. But yeah, okay. I'm going to get to chapter 14 real quick, guys. Here, Numbers 14, 1 through 6. All the congregation lifted up their voice. And 1 second. They lifted up their voice and cried, and the people wept that night. All the children of Israel murmured against Moses and against Aaron, and the whole congregation said to them, would God that we had died in the land of Egypt? It's a weird way of saying, did God want us to die in the land of Egypt, or would God had brought us out in the wilderness to die? And wherefore has the Lord brought us to this land, to fall by the sword, that our wives and our children should be prey? Were it not better for us to return into Egypt? And they said one to another, let us make a captain, and let us return into Egypt. Then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembly of the congregation of the children of Israel. And Joshua the son of Nun, and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, which were of them that searched the land, they rent their clothes. So this is a moment, guys, like I tried to highlight here. This isn't just them saying, we don't want to go into the land because we're afraid. These guys are trying to usurp the authority that Yahweh gave to Moses and Aaron and affirmed with all these miraculous signs, and literally the angel of the presence that's chilling above them right now. These guys are saying they're going to throw the middle finger to that authority structure and make their own authority structure. They're going to make their own captain, and they're going to return to Egypt and just disregard everything the Father's done for them. This is why, just like in Numbers chapter 16 at the rebellion of Korah, Moses and Aaron do the same thing. They fall on their face immediately. And, I mean, you know, if you were to make a joke, it could be because they're ducking. Because they look over at the angel of the presence that's chilling in this pillar of cloud by day and fire by night, and they're just ducking because, you know, the last time that authority got disrespected, two sons of Aaron were killed with fire. So they could just be like, just duck real quick, Aaron. Angel's about to light them up again. I mean, these guys I can't imagine. It's hard for me. It's hard for me to imagine this mindset of being around these people, being in this circumstance, seeing all these miracles, getting to this place. I mean, it's one thing if, like, I mean, look, I've exhibited a lack of faith in my life on multiple occasions. I was very embarrassed and ashamed. And the Father had to teach me through that, hey, you got to trust me and all this. But I didn't have an angel just sitting right there next to me that had already showed like incredible power to make things happen. I didn't have an angel that the Father had just spoken through, you know, that was just right there, that was able to ward off an entire army of Egyptians. I didn't have this incredible power source just hanging out right there to affirm everything the Father was saying to me. I was just going off what I read in the book and what I was trying to make sense of and believe with my heart and walk out with my faith. And these guys have all these extra help, all this extra tools to help their faith increase, to be assured that the Father's got them. He's going to walk them into the land like he promised. And in the face of all that, like, they're still just like, yeah, we're just going to ignore. We're just done with all this. We're going to go back to Egypt. It's hard for me to understand that, and I don't want to act like I'm better than these people. Like I've said before, I've fallen and failed in my faith many times in my life, my walk with Christ. But this is a wild story right here, wild story, because we're going to see it happen again in a couple chapters. In number 16 with the rebellion of Korah. It's just wild. All right, so he goes on. Moses and Aaron fall down. Joshua and Caleb rent their clothes because they're faithful. That means they're renting their clothes to show that, you know, this great distress about what's happening, and they're on the side of Yahweh. Numbers 14, 7 through 12 says, they spoke to the company of the children of Israel, saying, the land which we passed through to search it, it's exceedingly good land. If the Lord delight in us, then he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land which flows with milk and honey. Only rebel not against the Lord, neither fear the people of the land, for they are bread for us. Their defense is departed from them, and the Lord is with us. Fear them not. But all the congregation bade stone them with stones. And the Lord of the glory of the Lord appeared in the tabernacle of the congregation for all the children of Israel. Okay, so this is, and the Lord said to Moses, how long will this people provoke me? How long will they refuse to believe me for all the signs which I've shown among them? I will smite them with pestilence and disinherit them, and will make of you a greater nation and mightier than they. So look at the sequence of events. So all night these people are crying in fear. They then, men who try to be leaders, but they're not leaders at all because they're not following Yahweh in faith, like Moses and Aaron were. These men step up and they say, we're gonna ignore your authority. We're gonna make ourselves captains, or choose a captain from among us. We're gonna take everybody back to Egypt. This is ridiculous. We can't do this. Then it escalates. Then it gets to the point where, you know, they're being pleaded with, like, let's don't rebel against the Lord. Don't do this. Don't do this, man. And they're saying, how about we just stone you? So basically, guys, I don't know if you realize, I got highlighted here, they're threatening to kill Moses and Aaron. This isn't just simply we're afraid. We don't want to go into the land. Let us go back home. This is, no, we're going to kill you now. Now you're attacking Yahweh, because Yahweh set these people up as your authority. He chose these people to lead you. So when these people want to kill the people, this is called agency, guys. The agency that was given to Moses and Aaron, they're supposed to respect that agency, just like the agency of the angel that's with them. They're supposed to respect that, because that's representation of Yahweh's authority, Yahweh's name. So they are literally breaking the third commandment to the nth degree right here. They're defiling the name of God. They're blaspheming with violent disregard. They're blaspheming the name of the Lord, which is the authority of the Lord. So this is why, as soon as these guys, as it escalates in the story, and they want to start stoning people because they're going to try to kill their way out of the authority of that they're under, which was a good and loving authority, this is the moment when the angel says, all right, I'm going to show up. And, and that, I can only imagine, like, Moses nearly wetting his pants or wetting his robe. Because, this, for about 24 hours so far, the angel hasn't showed up, right? But now the angel's getting involved, and you're like, oh, gonna have to bury some people. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy to me. Yeah, it's just, no, I won't go there. I don't want to derail. We got to keep going. But I just think this is a very interesting moment here. And of course, the angel speaking for Yahweh. That's the point. He's speaking as if he is Yahweh. That's the point of being the mouthpiece, being an angel that comes in service to bring a message. He's like, should I just destroy them all? Just like we had the conversation in Exodus 33, Yahweh's on the top of the mountain speaking through the angels, saying, look, these rebellion opposite people, should we just destroy them all or start over with you? Just like in Exodus 33, we see in Numbers 14, Moses is going to intercede for the people. Why? Because he is a priest. He's not the high priest, like Aaron was given that authority, but Moses is like a king and a priest. So this is why we got that Deuteronomy 18 prophecy later about Yeshua being risen up likened unto Moses, someone that ruled in the capacity of a king, but also had mediation ability like a high priest. So this is what's so unique about Moses in his position. One second, guys. So here in 13 through 18 says, but Moses replied to the Lord, the Egyptians will hear of it, for by your strength you brought this people from among them. And they will tell it to the inhabitants of the land, that they have already heard that you, O Lord, are in the midst of this people, that you, O Lord, have been seen face to face, that your cloud stands over them, and that you go before them in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. If you kill this people as one man, the nations who have heard of your fame will say, well, because the Lord was unable to bring this people into the land he swore to give them, he slaughtered them in the wilderness. So now I pray, may the power of my Lord be magnified, just as you have declared. The Lord is slow to anger and abounding in loving devotion, forgiving iniquity and transgression. Yet he will by no means leave the guilty unpunished. He will visit the iniquity of the fathers upon their children to the third and fourth generation. Guys, do you realize what's happening here? Moses is like, I mean, you can't do reverse psychology on Yahweh, but Moses is like appealing to his sense of reputation, which I think is really interesting to me. He's sitting there, the Lord, he's like, look, if you kill these people, if you don't finish the job of why you brought them out of Egypt, all Egypt and all the nations that saw you bring them out of Egypt will think that you can't do it. Like, this is such a unique way to try to appeal to the Father for mercy. But this is how he starts. And then he follows it up with the name that was proclaimed when he showed him his backside and hid Moses in the cleft of the rock, and then proclaimed his authority to them. And part of that authority was this idea: the Lord is slow to anger and abounding in loving devotion, forgiving iniquity and transgression. Yet by no means he'll leave the guilty unpunished. He will visit the iniquity of the fathers upon their children to the third and fourth generations. Like, that was all this paragraph lumped into Yahweh shouting his what makes his authority, what makes his name. That was the part of it. And Moses is giving his words back to him. He's like, didn't you, I mean, he didn't say it like this, but this is the equivalent of Moses saying back to Yahweh, didn't you tell me that you're abounding in love, slow to anger, forgiving, but yet you will punish the guilty? Didn't you tell me that? Like, I'm calling upon your words from earlier, Yahweh, because right now I need you to abide in that behavior that you said that you exemplify. Very interesting, guys. We're looking at we're looking at mediation. I don't know if you guys realize what we're looking at, but we're looking at mediation. So 1 Timothy 2:5, when Paul's trying to express to us how there's the Father and the Son mediates to the Father on behalf of mankind. What do you think that conversation goes like? Do you understand that we're reading mediation right here? When the priest goes in on a Day of Atonement, when the priest goes in before Yahweh, specifically Yeshua in the heavenly tabernacle above, who can actually see the Father. It's not like a Levite priest on the ground that's staring at an empty room with the Ark of the Covenant. But what do you think happens when Yeshua goes into the Father, and the Father's like, all these people are just, I got books and books and books the angels have compiled of all their sins. Should I just blot them out? And Yahweh's like, I'm wondering if this is part of the conversation for mediation that happens between the Father and the Son, that the Son is calling upon the Father's established word that expresses his character traits, because we know that Yahweh doesn't change, nor does his Son change. This is, to me, if the Father sits on the throne of mercy, which is why the covenant seat was called the Ark, the mercy seat, because he is not one that any should perish, but all should come to the knowledge of Jesus Christ to be saved, right? So this is the idea that if the Father is more merciful than he is, willing to kill people for their transgression, then what is the conversation like between a priest who goes before that holy, righteous God and says, hey, these people, I know they're very imperfect, but you said you were merciful. So I'm calling upon that right now. Please be merciful to them. Is that possibly what some of this conversation looks like with Yeshua? I don't know. But I think this is the most unlikely conversation between a type of priest and the Father, where he's not sitting there saying, oh, please forgive them, oh great one, please forgive them. No, he's saying, look, he's talking to them like these two dudes sitting at a bar. He's like, hey man, didn't you remember you told me earlier that you were like this? You still gonna be like that? You're gonna be who you said you were? It's like I don't want to say that Moses is being arrogant, but man, this is some bravery. Like this is some, that he's trying to mediate on behalf of the people with definitely some courage, because that's how much he believes in Yahweh. That's how much he believes in the Creator of heaven and earth, that has already revealed himself and said to him, hey, this is who I am. Well, Moses believed it. That's the difference between what we're seeing with all these other people that didn't believe Yahweh was who he was. That's why they want to abandon Yahweh and the leaders that Yahweh gave them, and they want to go back to their oppression. They want to return to the vomit like dogs, right? So this is where Moses is speaking to Yahweh in a very frank manner, trying to encourage them, but this is actual mediation. He's trying to save their lives, even though they don't deserve it, but at the same time, he's calling to the carpet the character that Yahweh said he has. Yeah, this is an amazing conversation to me, guys. Amazing. I'll stop ranting about it, but so here in 19-24, he says, pardon, I pray, the iniquity of this people, in keeping with the greatness of your loving devotion, just as you've forgiven them ever since they left Egypt. He's basically saying, look, we've been through this before. You forgave them last time. Please continue forgiving them. Verse 20. It says, I've pardoned them as you requested, the Lord replied. Just as surely as I live, and as surely as the whole earth is filled with the glory of the Lord, not one of the men you've seen my glory and the signs I performed in Egypt in the wilderness, not one of the men who have seen my glory and the signs I performed in Egypt and in the wilderness, yet have tested me and disobeyed me these 10 times, not one will ever see the land that I swore to give their fathers. None of those who have treated me with contempt will see it. But my servant Caleb has a different spirit and has followed me wholeheartedly. I will bring him into the land he has entered, and his descendants will inherit it. So this is where we get this understanding now of this generation that was the elders of this people, and the leaders of their tribes. All of them that decided to treat Yahweh with contempt, they're not going to go, and they're going to be wandering for the additional 38 years, total of 40 years. And this is a sad moment. So this is where only the people that showed devotion to Yahweh are going to get to continue on the original path. But they're just going to have to be patient because of the rest of the congregation. So this is where he's singling out Joshua and Caleb in these verses here. Verse 25, now since the Amalekites and the Canaanites are living in the valleys, turn back tomorrow and head for the wilderness along the route to the Red Sea. Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, how long will this wicked congregation grumble against me? I have heard the complaints that the Israelites are making against me. So I tell them, as surely as I live, declares the Lord, I will do to you exactly as I heard you say. Your bodies will fall in this wilderness, all who were numbered in the census, everyone 20 years of age or older, because you have grumbled against me. Surely none of you will enter the land in which I swore to settle you, except Caleb, son of Jephunneh, Joshua, son of Nun. But I will bring your children, whom you said you would become plunder, into the land you have rejected, and they will enjoy it. As for you, however, your bodies will fall in the wilderness. So now Yahweh is pulling back their words onto them as he extends this punishment to them. He could have killed them all for mutiny. He could have killed them all for absolute blaspheming his name. And he's about to kill 10 of them as an example. But he wanted to kill the whole congregation because they were literally spitting in his face and everything he's done for them and trying to go back to Baal worship, to go back to Egypt. That's breaking the covenant they had made at Exodus 19. So for all the atheists out there that might be watching this and saying, see, Yahweh's a horrible person. No, this is a person that went into covenant willingly, raised their hands, said everything you say we will do. And now they're going back on that covenant. They're breaking that covenant. So this is where the Father, there has to be consequences. So great amount of mercy is shown to the entire congregation. They're not all killed. The 10 guys who stirred up the bad report and got all the people worried, they spreaded the bad gossip about, they lied basically. Their land was good. They could take it. They came back and lied and stirred the people up as contentiousness. These are the people that will experience the punishment. But what's interesting is a lot of people ask, they'll say, well, why would he make them stay in the wilderness, but not us for the sake of their children? And it's in my opinion, it's also for the sake of he's slow and abounding in mercy, slow to anger, and he doesn't wish that any should perish, but that all should come to. This is that. By the way, that verse in Peter is the answer in that passage in Peter when people are asking, well, where is the Lord? Why hasn't he come back yet? Everything continues on as it always has. Where's all this fulfillment of these prophecies that you said was going to happen? And it's, Peter's follow-up is the idea that, well, Father he's slow because he doesn't want anyone to perish. He wants everyone to come to repentance. So he's given these people, instead of killing them, he listens to Moses, forgives them. He's not going to give them the blessing he promised, of the blessing of the covenant, or at least the immediate blessing of taking them into the land of Canaan. But he's going to give that to their children because their children were held harmless, everyone age of 20 and below. But everyone that transgressed against him in this regard, and this is not a light transgression, he's giving them all this time to repent. They still may not go into the land, but that doesn't mean they can't repent for the next 40 years. So to me, this is a huge act of mercy. He's given them 40 years to repent. Also, he tells us, Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 2, he kept them, because of this, also, he kept them there in the wilderness so they could learn his commandments. That's not just the children. That's all these people that aren't going into the land who are going to die in the desert. And now I say die in the desert, meaning their life will expire while they're still living in the desert. I don't mean it in like a derogatory way. Again, the most severe form of punishment he passed over through the mediation of Moses. He's not killing them outright. He's going to let them live out the rest of their lives, but they're not going to go into the land that he wanted to take them to. And Deuteronomy 8 follows up with this moment to tell them, Yahweh said, I brought you into the desert, and I brought you here for 40 years to test you, to see if it's in your heart, to keep my commandments. Why? What happens if you keep his commandments? You get the promise of the covenant, which is eternal life. You get resurrected. He's given them 40 years to repent, to learn his ways. Guys, this is extreme mercy he's showing these people. And he's given them room for discipleship. So don't get confused, and don't let Judaism and don't let Protestant Catholic denominational dispensation, supersessionism theology confuse you to think that, oh, these people are all doomed for hell. That's Catholic idea. And these people, because they didn't go into the immediate promise of the land, then they're out of the covenant. No. Yahweh's not caring for 2 million people and their children that are out of covenant. Okay, I said that. That sounded bad. Yes, Yahweh cares for everything in his creation. All I'm saying is he's not holding their hand through this process after kicking them out of covenant, because they're not kicked out of covenant. They're just not getting that immediate little promise of taking them to the land of Canaan in their lifetime. Not even Moses gets to the land of Canaan. Not even Aaron. Guys, think about Moses and Aaron didn't rebel. But they didn't get to the land of Canaan either. Are they not going to be saved? Were they kicked out of covenant somehow? No. No, this is just an immediate promise that was taken away from them, or an immediate part of the deal, if you will, that was taken away from them because these people were rebellious. And also, there's other moments where Moses and Aaron were rebellious, but they also can't go into the land of Canaan either. But it's for a different reason. Do we think that Moses isn't going to be in the resurrection? Of course not. Of course he will be in the resurrection. So all I'm trying to say is, do you have this? There's a difference between the eternal blessings of the covenant that are fulfilled at the resurrection versus the immediate blessings that are fulfilled in your lifetime. So there can be consequences doled out by the Father if you break the covenant, immediate consequences in your lifetime, but that doesn't mean you're not saved. That doesn't mean you're kicked out of covenant. That doesn't mean that Yeshua won't raise you to life, eternal life. He gives them 40 years to disciple. That's beautiful, guys. It's beautiful. All right, I'm going to stop preaching and get back to this real quick. 33 through 38, your children will be shepherds in the wilderness for 40 years. They will suffer for your unfaithfulness until the last of your bodies lie in the wilderness. In keeping with the 40 days you spied out the land, you shall bear the guilt for 40 years, a year for each day, and you will experience my alienation. I, the Lord, have spoken, and I will surely do these things to this. Sorry. Verse 35, I, the Lord, have spoken. I will surely do these things to this entire wicked congregation which has conspired against me. They will meet their end in the wilderness, and there they will die. So the men Moses had sent to spy out the land, who returned and made the whole congregation grumble against him by bringing about a bad report about the land, those men who had been brought out the bad report about the land were struck down by a plague before the Lord. Of those men who had gone out to spy the land, only Joshua son of Nun and Caleb son of Jephunneh remained alive. So guys, I'm sorry, I'm coughing. 1 second. There's two things here I want to point out. I saw a comment real quick. Where did it go? Yeah, Thomas, that's right, Tom. Moses appeared at the Transfiguration, so that's a decent testimony to his faithfulness. Absolutely. Even though he didn't get that immediate benefit of going into the land of Canaan with the rest of everybody else. We're going to read about that when we get to Deuteronomy. He asks to see the land from a high mountaintop, Mount Nebo, but he doesn't actually get to go into the land. Okay. The second thing, a lot of people ask about deception. This is an incredible moment and a live example. Remember, what does the New Testament say? These stories are for our benefit, our edification, our learning, our discipleship. Okay? So these stories in this Old Testament, we see these guys, as verse 37 says, the men who brought the bad report and stirred up the people against me, they struck down and died. Everyone else was kept alive through the mercy. So that means you have millions of people believe this bad report, wanted to turn away and go back to Egypt. It's like the ultimate spit in the face of the Father after everything he's done for them. And he spares them and gives them a chance to change their ways and repent for 40 years. So the men who brought back the bad report deceived the people. And here's what's so interesting about this, guys. This goes into this conversation I see so much in Torah communities about people saying, well, and they apply this logic to all types of little sub-threads of conversation in Torah observant communities. They'll say, if you're not saying the name right, then you're deceived and you're not saved. They'll say, if you don't believe that you're the bride of Christ, you're deceived and you're not saved. Some of them will say, if you don't believe that Yeshua is actually the Father and they're not two people, they're really just one. If you don't believe that's their doctrine. If they claim if you don't believe their doctrine, then you're not saved. Then you don't understand God, you're not saved. Then you truly don't have Christ, you don't have the Spirit. Like all these ways that people try to force this weird idea of conversation to say, if you don't believe like I believe, you're deceived and you're not saved. And they also think that every Christian that's still in the modern church who hasn't had a chance to have the fullness of the gospel explained to them, the fullness of discipleship explained to them, who just goes to a church and all they've ever heard is that they need to do some of the 10 commandments and love Jesus and love their neighbor, and that's all they know. And they think that the law is done away with. They think that the Old Testament's not relevant to them. They're deceived. That doesn't mean their hearts are bad. Here's a situation where the people were deceived. They could have believed Caleb and Joshua, but instead they believed the other 10 dudes. They believed the bad report, the negative report, instead of the positive report. So they actually had greater opportunity than a lot of these people that we see sitting in churches that don't understand the fullness of the word yet. Because at least these people had at least 2 dudes trying to tell them to be encouraged. Yahweh's got us. We got this. Let's believe in the Lord. And the other 2 were like, no, let's abandon Yahweh. Let's go back to Egypt. They fell for the deception. Yahweh still spared them to give them a chance to disciple. Guys, if you don't understand that your Heavenly Father is not just cutting people out of eternity, the chance for eternity, with every little deception that they're in, if you don't understand that the Father knows everyone's life, every thought and deed are recorded by the angels, every circumstance that they grew up with, whether they actually had any exposure to someone that actually knew the word, could teach it properly, versus going into a church that just, literally flying the rainbow flag outside their front door. I've seen them. They were in town I used to live in. Methodist churches flying the rainbow flag. Guys, like, if you don't understand how people can be that's all they know, that's the only deception they've ever had any privy of exposure to, is that deception, and they're still trying to search for God amidst that deception. This is why our hearts should not be trying to weed people out based on these circumstantial or little phonetic phraseology of how you think or believe or say something. We should have an open heart like the Father to say, look, these people don't get it yet, but let's give them time to disciple, to sow the word into their life. This is exactly the moment and the place where Yahweh exemplifies that behavior. The sower sows the word. Matthew 4:14 is Yeshua, who does the behavior of the Father. The Father exemplifies that behavior in this passage right here. He gives them 40 years to sow the word in their heart instead of kicking them out of covenant. Because he's loving and merciful. And that's how we should be to all the people around us who either don't know God or do know God, but don't know a lot about him, right? And have unfortunately heard bad deceptive doctrine at some denominational church. This is the heart we should have for them. Sow the word with them. Be patient, loving, pray for them. I'm sorry, I'm getting off the soapbox, guys. I'm getting off the soapbox. 39-45, when Moses relayed these words to all the Israelites, the people mourned bitterly. Early the next morning, they got up and went up toward the ridge of the hill country. We have indeed sinned, they said, but we will go to the place the Lord has promised. So these people are pretty hilarious. Pretty hilarious. So they heard what Moses said. They're like, yeah, oh man, that's sad. All right, we're going back. We're going to go to the land of Canaan. You're like, wait. You just tried to abandon him. Now he's telling you that instead of him killing you, you just saw him kill these other 10 dudes that stirred up the trouble. And then now you're going to ignore his new words and try to go into the land of Canaan. You guys, these people are fun. These people are wild. This is the Matthew McConaughey Lincoln commercial where he's just rubbing his fingers. Y'all wild. They are wild, man. All right. Moses said to them, why are you transgressing the commandment of the Lord? This is the fresh commandment too. This is a fresh instruction. He just told them, look, I'm not taking you to the land of Canaan. You're going to stay here. You're going to wander in the wilderness for another 40 years. I'm not going to take you into this land. And they're like, no, we're going to go. We're sorry. We're going to go. We're going to go into the land. It's unbelievable. Moses says, this will not succeed. Do not go up lest you be struck down by your enemies, because the Lord is not among you. He just told them, you're going to face my alienation. Yahweh just told them in the previous passage, you're going to face my alienation. These people are like, yeah, we're going to go up and let's take the land now. Now we're going to take the land. Like, what kind of mentality is this? These people are on drugs. 42, do not go up lest you be struck down by your enemies, because the Lord is not among you. For there the Amalekites and the Canaanites will face you, and you will fall by the sword. Because you've turned away from the Lord, he will not be with you. 44, but they dared to go up to the ridge of the hill country, though neither Moses nor the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord moved from the camp. Remember, the Ark of the Covenant moved whenever that angel in the pillar of the cloud got up and moved. So that means the pillar of the cloud, the angel, that super powerful angel that just killed the previous 10 guys because of their transgression, their mutiny, that angel's not moving anywhere. He stays stationary, just like the earth. He's not going anywhere. So therefore, the Levites and the Ark of the Covenant aren't going anywhere. Moses isn't going anywhere. Aaron's not going anywhere. Their whole leadership's not going anywhere. So who are these people? These people are literally just going out on their own volition they're not even bringing their military generals with them. And they're like, we're going to go take these people. Yeah, the Amalekites and the Canaanites who live in that part of the hill country came down and attacked them and then routed them all the way to Hormah, meaning they beat their butts. I'm sure a lot of people died that day. Because of this ridiculous mindset of, oh, we don't want to do what Yahweh says, but Yahweh doesn't like what we're doing. Okay, well, he wants to do something different now, but we're going to ignore that too, and we're going to still go try to do what he originally said, even though now he's changed the parameters. Just everything is messed up here. It's so messed up here. So, guys, if y'all have if you want to call in, I'm going to put it on screen here. Go ahead and call in. I'm going to keep going into Numbers 15. One through 7. The Lord said to Moses, speak to the Israelites and tell them, after you enter the land that I'm giving you as a home, and you present an offering made by fire to the Lord from the herd or flock to produce a pleasing aroma to the Lord, either a burnt offering or a sacrifice, for a special vow or for a freewill offering or appointed feast. Then the one presenting his offering to the Lord shall also present a grain offering of 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with 1/4 hin of olive oil. With the burnt offering or the sacrifice of each lamb, you are to prepare 1/4 hin of wine as a drink offering. With the ram, you are to prepare a grain offering of 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with 1/3 of hin of olive oil and 1/3 of a hin of wine as a drink offering, a pleasing aroma to the Lord. When you prepare a young bull as a burnt offering or sacrifice to fulfill a vow or as a peace offering to the Lord, present with the bull a grain offering of 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with 1/2 hin of olive oil. Also present 1/2 hin of wine as a drink offering. It's an offering made by fire, a pleasing aroma to the Lord. This is to be done for each bull, ram, lamb, or goat. This is how you must prepare each one, no matter how many. Everyone who is native born shall prepare these things in this way, which he presents an offering made by fire as a pleasing aroma to the Lord. And for the generations to come, if a foreigner residing with you or someone else among you wants to prepare an offering made by fire as a pleasing aroma to the Lord, he is to do exactly as you do. Because, guys, this is the idea of the Father has one law, whether you're native born of Israel or you're grafted in, or you're foreign born and you come to do the law of God. If you're making sacrifices and you're bringing meals before the Father, you're trying to be in covenant with Father, you're trying to do the law of God, you're being grafted in. You're in faith and belief, okay? So this is what we're reading about. Moses is expressing to all the people, hey, you're going to go into the land. So you're going to be around a lot of other nations. What happens if they want to start serving Yahweh as you do? Graft them in. Let one law for all the peoples. It's one law from Yahweh. It's the same Torah throughout all of time. It doesn't change, guys. It's one law. It's the Father's behavior. If you want to bring a sacrifice, if you want to bring a fellowship meal before the Father, this is how you do it, whether you're born Israel or whether you come from, like Caleb, whether you're a Kenizzite and you're grafted in through the tribe of Ephraim. Doesn't matter. If they want to serve Yahweh, let them, and this is how they do it. It's all the same law. Verse 15, he says, in the assembly is to have the same statute for you and for the foreign resident. It's a permanent statute for the generations to come. You and the foreigner shall be the same before the Lord. The same law, the same ordinance will apply to both you and to the foreigner residing with you. Guys, why would this matter? Yes, sweetie, my water is low. So if you want to bring me more water, I'll definitely appreciate it. So, guys, why would this matter? Why is the Father trying to reiterate to these people, not just because they're about to go and be around a bunch of other nations that may want to start worshiping Yahweh with them, but what do we see at the millennial reign? What is the promise of the covenant? What did he tell them in Exodus 19:5 and 6? I'm going to make you a royal priesthood. Talking to all the people, not just Aaron and the Levites, not just Moses, to all the people. All the people that raised their hand and said, yeah, we want to be in covenant with you. Everything you say we'll do. He said, I'll make you a royal priesthood. What does a royal priesthood need to know? They need to know how to bring fellowship meals before the Father, and they need to know how to minister to other people from other nations to bring them in to faith and belief. This is what we see happening. Everyone in covenant gets made into that royal priesthood at the resurrection. Well, at the resurrection, you go to the New Jerusalem, and then the New Jerusalem descends shortly after the day of the Lord onto the ground. And then all the nations of the earth are going to be drawn to the New Jerusalem to learn Torah. Well, they come first for judgment, but the ones that remain, the sheep, they then learn Torah. So if they're going to be learning Torah, that means they're going to be not foreign born. They're not residents of the New Jerusalem. They live outside of it. So therefore, they're going to have to learn the ways of fellowship meals so they can come. Thank you, sweetie. So they can come to do their fellowship at the New Jerusalem like they're supposed to and interact with the royal priesthood and also the new Levites that will be chosen during that time. See Isaiah 66, 17 through 21. Because that's a part of the Father's behavior. This whole thing that he's setting up here in our generation, before we get to the millennial kingdom of the reign of Yeshua, is teaching us to do the commandments so that when we get resurrected, we then get the fullness of the commandment. We're practicing the jobs of the priesthood right now, which is to know his ways, to walk in his love, understand what his fellowship meals are like, so that we can exist. We're showing him we want that eternal behavior. Well, he rewards everyone at the first resurrection who takes part in that to become part of this priesthood. Everyone from Adam to the day Yeshua returns, that he resurrects, he make a part of this royal priesthood. It's called the first resurrection event. Those people then get to minister to all the millions and millions of people that will repopulate for 1,000 years without war, without famine, without disease. We then get to teach exponential amounts of people who come to the New Jerusalem how to do the ways of the Father. We'll be teaching them this exact verse because this is what they'll have to abide by to come in and celebrate Shavuot, to celebrate tabernacles, like Zechariah 14 talks about, 15 through 20. As Passover and Shavuot are mentioned in Ezekiel 45. All those are millennial reign contexts. This is, guys, everyone in the quote-unquote old covenant is being trained for the new covenant. The new covenant, you're a royal priesthood. And you'll be dealing with people from the nations to help graft them in. This is exactly why he's teaching them this in the wilderness. Verse 17. Then the Lord said to Moses, speak to the Israelites and tell them, when you enter the land which I'm bringing you, you eat the food of the land, you shall lift up an offering to the Lord. From the first of your dough, you are to lift up a cake as a contribution. Offer it just like an offering from the threshing floor. Throughout your generations, you are to give the Lord an offering from the first of your dough. Now, if you stray unintentionally and you do not obey all these commandments that the Lord has spoken to Moses, all that the Lord has commanded you through Moses from the day the Lord gave them and continuing through the generations to come. And if it were done unintentionally without the knowledge of the congregation, then the whole congregation is to prepare one young bull as a burnt offering, a pleasing aroma to the Lord, with its grain offering and drink offering according to the regulation, and one male goat offering as a sin offering. The priest is to make atonement for the whole congregation of Israel so that they may be forgiven. For the sin was unintentional, and they have brought to the Lord an offering made by fire and a sin offering presented before the Lord for their unintentional sin. Then the whole congregation of Israel and the foreigners residing among them will be forgiven, since it happened to all the people unintentionally. So not only are these people being grafted in, they're being forgiven as well. So this is another situation where, this whole idea that in Romans 9, and we're going to go over Ephesians 2 here in just a few minutes, Paul's talking about grafting people in, guys, and man-made traditions have tried to teach people that, the church is replacing Israel, and that's what that means. No, that's not what that means at all. That's taught by men who don't know the Old Testament. The Old Testament is telling us right here in Numbers 15, just like it does in Exodus 12 and other places, this is what the Father's behavior is. This is how the Father allows people to get into covenant, even if you're not born of Israel. This is why Israel is supposed to be a light to the nations. A light meaning you share the right Torah behavior. Torah is called the light in Proverbs 6. So you're sharing the right behavior to the nations. You become a light to the nations. What does Yeshua say? That they may see your good works and glorify your God who's in heaven? Well, you have to shine the light of your Torah behavior, your good works. You have to shine the light of your godly behavior, so they see that and they want that, right? They want in. Because the world is cruel, pitiless, merciless, devastating to the average person. But the Father's behavior is warm and welcoming, encouraging, it builds you up, it grows you. So this is why the Father is trying to say, look, even if there's other people, foreigners that want to reside among you, they get to do this behavior too. Oh, by the way, even if they messed up with you, I'll forgive them with you because I'm grafting them in. They're part of covenant now. This is how the Father is amazing, guys. 70 says, also, if one person sins unintentionally, he's to present a year-old female goat as a sin offering. The priest shall make atonement before the Lord on behalf of the person who erred by sinning unintentionally. And when the atonement has been made for him, he'll be forgiven. You shall have the same law for the one who acts in error, whether he's native-born or a foreign resident among you. So here it is again. This is like the third time in this passage. He's trying to express clearly, hey, you got to treat these people the exact same way. Guys, look at me for a second. What do we see in Israel today with Judaism? They call the Gentiles of the nations, they call Christians goy. They have a separate law for people that abide in Judaism versus anyone else, and even Christians. Even though they reject the Messiah, they reject the Father and the Son anyway. The point is, this very law right here destroys the majority of teachings of interaction in Judaism. Judaism teaches something that is wholly unscriptural, not Torah. It's traditions of men, and it's actually Babylonia. Guys, this is the Father's love to let everyone come in. This is the most tolerant religion on the face of the planet. But yet it's somehow the enemy tries to twist it and say that it's intolerant. This is why, for anyone watching, you may have clicked on this video and it says Torah Portions, and you think, oh my goodness, is this guy like Judaizing? No, guys, Judaizing was something that took you away from Christ. Judaism is something that taught traditions of Judaism and not the actual law of God that we're reviewing today. The Torah just means instructions, as you saw in the opening song and the words on the screen. It just means instructions. That's all it means. It's the Father's instructions on how to live according to love, how to interact with your neighbor, how to graft in people into the faith. It's beautiful, guys. It's very simple. Verse 32, while the Israelites were in the wilderness, a man was found gathering wood on the Sabbath day, and those who found the man gathering wood brought to him Moses and Aaron and the whole congregation. And because it had not been declared what should be done to him, they placed him in custody. The Lord said to Moses, the man must surely be put to death. The whole congregation is to stone him outside the camp. So the whole congregation took the man outside the camp and stoned him to death, as the Lord commanded Moses. Guys, I want to remind you of the context of what we just read. Verse 30 here. But the person who sins defiantly, whether a native or a foreign, he blasphemes the Lord, that person should be cut off from among his people. He shall certainly be cut off because he's despised the word of the Lord and broken his commandment. His guilt remains on him. The very next passage, we see a guy coming in, just breaking the Sabbath. So the previous verses in Numbers 15, it just told us what happens if people sin unintentionally. Okay, there's forgiveness for them. That's fine. What happens if a person sins defiantly? There's a difference in defiantly, which is someone that's not repentant. This is unfortunately another huge problem I've seen in Torah communities, where they'll run around saying, oh, well, there's no forgiveness for intentional sins. You can only be forgiven for unintentional sins. And I'm like, have you guys not read Leviticus at all? Besides chapter 4, everything else in there is for intentional sins. The priesthood covers over the guilt offering, which is for someone that has done intentional sins. Those are intentional. The Father, look at Numbers chapter 15, look at Numbers 13 and 14, like we just read. The Father forgave all those people who intentionally descend. He showed mercy to their defiance. They tried to kill their leaders. That's very intentional. So what do we got here? What's the deal with this guy? Have you just explained? There's forgiveness for intentional sins. If people are repentant, there's forgiveness there. So what does this tell me? This tells me that the people in the wilderness, not the 10 who stirred up the trouble, they were cut off from the people. They blasphemed the name of the Lord. They defiantly sinned against the Father. The rest of the congregation who were deceived and led astray by those 10, the Father didn't view that as an intentional, defiant type of sin. They were just deceived. Here we got a guy who's not deceived. They've had several months now to abide in the Sabbath. They've been taught the Sabbath. The whole Exodus 16 moment, it was a test to teach them the Sabbath. They've already gone through, the tabernacle is already built, so they've already gone through multiple feast days. And this guy, they got the Sabbath feast day and the priest happening all the time. This guy, he's gotten to a point now where he should know better. He intentionally and defiantly goes out against the covenant. So this guy falls into the same category as the previous 10 guys, who it's not just simply I'm unintentionally sinning, or I'm still learning the commandments and I'm still wanting to be repentant and I want to try to do better, the Father's got plenty of mercy for that. He wants you to do better. He wants you to learn his ways and disciple. This is a dude that's outright rejecting the covenant. Why? Because what's the Sabbath? It's the sign of the covenant. This guy is rejecting the covenant. This is what I'm saying about this. It's not just simply, oh, this dude's breaking the Sabbath, kill him. No, there's lots of people that broke the Sabbath, the Father didn't kill them. This guy is doing it intentionally with defiance against the covenant, in the same vein as the previous 10 guys that were just killed who tried to go back to Egypt, meaning they don't want to be in covenant. It's not that they're bad at following directions. He's showing an act of defiance that blasphemes the Father, saying, I don't even want to be in this agreement anymore. So he could have just left, right? He could have just left on his own. Clearly, the leaders aren't keeping people corralled in fences. What did we read about in the past chapter? The entire congregation tried to go attack the Amalekites and the Canaanites on their own, without the Levites, without the angel of the presence, without the Ark of the Covenant nearby, without Moses and Aaron's say-so. So clearly, the Father's not keeping these people there by force. So if you've got a guy, this falls into Deuteronomy 13 territory. If you got a guy in the camp who he knows better, he's ignoring the covenant, but he's not leaving, what does that mean? That means he's going to be professing something different. Just like we're going to see here in the very next chapter, there's a whole other group of people. They don't want to leave. They want to supersede the terms of the covenant by creating mutiny against the leadership the Father set up. They want to do it their own. They want to be their own leaders, which is not according to anything that the Father set up for them, right? They're intentionally blaspheming the Lord. They also are going to die. But they're not leaving. They could just leave. If you want to leave, leave. Go, bro. These people are trying to stay and sway people to do things outside of the covenant. This is why the Father has to weed these people out. To think about this for a second, guys. Everyone that's brought in, the Father says, look, if I'm laying out all the terms of the covenant, it's literally just doing my behavior. I call them the commandments, statutes, ordinances, precepts, and judgments. But it's really not that complicated, guys. It's just, this is the way I behave in heaven. All the angels behave like this. I'm asking you to do this as well. This is what I call covenant terms. If you do this and you practice this behavior, I'll give you eternal life. Oh, and by the way, I'm giving you a priesthood so that if you mess up, you can have atonement. And he's exemplified the process of the priesthood multiple times to this point. So then everyone says, yeah, we'll get involved. We'll do this. I'll be there. All right, sounds good. And they want to get involved. They want to be a part of this covenant. But then some people, after, they're duplicitous. They're hypocritical. They get in, they say, well, I don't want to be a part of this covenant after all. I don't want to disciple myself. I don't want to receive discipleship. I don't want to be meek, be teachable. Instead, they want to stay in the benefits of the camp and do behavior outside of the Yahweh, do opposite behavior of the covenant. What's that going to do to the rest of the people? Are the other people who want to, are they going to be swayed? Just like we saw the entire congregation deceived by 10 men, what's going to happen with the rest of the people? Are they going to also be swayed? This is why we see these same instructions in the New Testament where Paul's talking about people that are unrepentant in their sin and they want to stay among. No, you gotta kick them out of the congregation. They're unrepentant in their sin. Now, Paul's not even advocating for corporal punishment or capital punishment, I should say. He's just saying just exclude them from fellowship if they're not trying to abide in the ways of the covenant and they keep trying to interact with you. Because clearly they're going to lead you into bad behavior. What does he say in 1 Corinthians 15? Bad company corrupts good character. This dude, number 15, is bad company. The Father lets him stay. He's going to corrupt good character. We've already seen this happen over and over again. We're going to see it happen again next week in number 16. So, guys, for a lot of people that are sitting there thinking like, oh, man, like they look at this. We see this number 15 passage thrown in the face of believers who say they want to keep the Torah by other deceived believers who have heard bad dispensation or, church replacement theology doctrines. And they'll go to passages like this and they'll say, oh, well, so that means we got to kill people who break the Sabbath. They ignore all the context, all the stuff I just explained to you. They ignore everything about the mercy of the Father already shown to these people. Excuse me, guys. So anyway, point is, guys, this isn't just a random story. This isn't just a random person. This is a guy that What I'm about to say is what's called eisegesis, and I rarely try to do this, but I'm going to lovingly suggest the reason in verse 34 that they place him in custody is because they're trying to figure out what's going on. They have to evaluate what should be done to him. They got to evaluate him. This is the job of a priest. You evaluate the matter. You investigate. All right, why was the transgression made? What's your heart? Are you repentant? No? You don't want to be in covenant? This is the big sign of the covenant. You're intentionally just like, bro, like, there's no trees out here. Everyone can see you walking around trying to go find some sticks. Like, what's going on? This dude is in outward defiance of the Father. This isn't just somebody that forgot it was the seventh day. All right. 37-41. Later, the Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites, tell them that throughout the generations to come, they're to make for themselves tassels for the four corners of their garments, with a blue cord on each tassel. These will serve as tassels for you to look at, so that you may remember all the commandments of the Lord, that you may obey them, and not prostitute yourselves by following your own heart and your own eyes." So I got my tassels on, guys. If you're not wearing your own tassels, I encourage you. It's lots of easy ways to make them for literally $2-3. You can go to the craft store and get you some thread and tie them together and make them. Doesn't have to be fancy. Because why? Look at what verse 39 says. These will serve for you to look at, so they may remind you of the commandments of the Lord. I subconsciously play with mine throughout the day, twist them in my fingers, and then I realize what I'm doing. And every single time I take my hands away from them and I stop, twist them into my fingers, I remember what they are. And I remember what they're for. Am I perfect? No. Do I still have issues that I work at my heart and mind? Of course. But they remind me. They're there, and they definitely work. Verse 39 is fulfilled in my life every day. They definitely work. So I would encourage you, if you're not already doing that, it's an easy way to help you with your discipleship. Verse 40, then you will remember and obey all my commandments, and you will be set apart to your God. You'll be holy to your God. Verse 41, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am the Lord your Elohim, your God. So guys, real quick, I want to play something, which is a blessing. This is our brother Matthew Jansen. And he actually wrote a song about the tassels. Let me know in the chat if you guys can hear this.
Tell the Israelite people to make fringes on the borders of their garments. This command was to be forever. So let's obey Yahweh together and make on our fringes a ribbon of blue to remember His commandments that we all should know and do. Oh, Yahweh, your word has always been true. Oh, so I'll make me a ribbon of blue, and it shall be to you a fringe, and it shall be to you a fringe, that ye may look upon it and remember and do His commandments, and He will seek you and He will honor you. Oh, let us not seek after our own heart, but remember that the Bible is true, so that we might be obedient and wear that ribbon of blue. Oh, so I'll make on my fringes a ribbon of blue to remember His commandments that we all should know and do. Oh, Yahweh, your word has always been true. Oh, so I'll make me a ribbon of blue. All right, Papa's verse. He wrote this one. Now, man, he will say, oh, brother, that's been done away. But we know what Yahweh says is for our generation today. All scripture is given by his inspiration and is used for reproof. So to follow the command, in Numbers 15, we need to wear the ribbon of blue. Oh, so I'll make on my fringes the ribbon of blue to remember his commandments that we all should know and do. Oh, Yahweh, your word has always been true. Oh, so I'll make me a ribbon of blue. Old song.
That was back in, I think me and Papa wrote that one back in 1998. Sitting in Papa's living room. I was here.
I didn't know Papa wrote a verse with just that first part.
His brother that we
The
sang.
whole verse. He said, put in this. Man, he will say, oh, that's been done away. And we laughed.
Yeah, Hannibal, I'm sorry. No, you can't. I actually searched for this on Matthew's YouTube channel, but it's not there. He just has teachings on there. But that's actually from Messenger of the Most High. So if you guys aren't already following Messenger of the Most High page on Facebook, go do that right now. And this is what it looks like. And here's the link. So this is our brother Wes Blaze. He manages and owns Messenger of the Most High page on Facebook. And I think Father's really been blessing it. I think it's over like 100,000 followers now. But what he does is he actually brings in a lot of different stuff from a lot of ministries so that you have access to it, right? So it's like a hub, if you will, of different ministries that he brings in. He also has a YouTube channel as well, so go subscribe to that as well, Messenger of the Most High, where he places not just canonized videos, but he places videos from all other ministries, and that way you get it like a nice mix, so it's a great idea. Oh, hey, it says he's at 103,000 now. Praise the Father. Awesome. All right, guys. So Ephesians chapter 2. This is where we're going to talk about, we just talked about the grafting in idea in Numbers. So this is where Paul also expounds upon the idea of grafting in, because it's the same covenant, it's the same law. Verse 11, it says, therefore remember that at one time you Gentiles in the flesh, called the uncircumcision by what is called the circumcision, which is made in the flesh by hands. Now, real quick, guys, this is Paul. Okay, guys, he's a very wordy writer. So I used to go to a writers group, and they would tell us, they would have you write a draft of something, and then you would pass it to the person on your left, and they would edit it for you, and then hand it back to you, and you'd be like, oh wow, I was saying a whole bunch of words I didn't need to say. I wasn't communicating effectively and concisely and clearly. I was like, had a bunch of run-on sentences, and I had a bunch of words that I probably could have had someone look it over and edit it. Paul didn't have that luxury. This is why we have stuff like this. So he goes in and he tries to say, therefore, remember at that one time that you were Gentiles in the flesh. That should be a stop. But he then expounds. Called the uncircumcision by what is called the circumcision. So what is called the circumcision is reference to the Jews of his day, the Pharisees of his day, that followed Paul around to all the places he had made converts, and they tried to actually get people to get circumcised. And they would tell them, oh, just because you believe in Jesus doesn't mean anything. You're not truly in Israel unless you're circumcised. And so the Jews would call these people uncircumcised. And Paul was sitting there trying to teach them, well, let's first have faith in Yeshua, your high priest, and then we'll learn the rest of the Torah. Yes, circumcision is included, but that's not the first priority. just like it was in the first party with Abraham. God didn't tell Abraham to get circumcised until decades after he was already a follower in faith and belief. So Paul is battling this idea of this group of Pharisees that are chasing him around everywhere, trying to steal his converts and bring them into Judaism. They're truly Judaizing. Paul is not Judaizing. He's trying to tell people, look, worship Christ, but do the law of God. And because you were Gentiles, you were strangers, you were of the nations. You were formerly not in covenant, but now you are in covenant. So that's what he goes on in verse 12 to say, remember that you were at that time meaning when you were not in faith, when you were still, quote unquote, Gentile, you were of the nations, you were separated from Christ. You were alienated from the commonwealth of Israel and strangers to the covenant of promise, having no hope and without God in the world. But now, in Christ Jesus, meaning they put their faith in Yeshua as their high priest and savior, you who once were far off have now been brought near by the blood of Christ. This is beautiful. He goes on in verse 18 through 21 to say, for through him, through Yeshua, we both have access in one spirit to the Father. So then you are no longer strangers and aliens, but you are fellow citizens with the saints and members of the household of God, just like we saw in Numbers 15. One law of Israel for the foreign and for the native. One law. So guess who's the king of Israel? That's Yeshua. He's the high priest and king of Israel. So if you come in faith and belief in Yeshua and Jesus Christ of Nazareth, you are grafted into Israel. Did you know that? Verse 20 says, this household of God is built on the foundation of the apostles and the prophets, and Christ Jesus himself is the cornerstone, in whom the whole structure, being joined together, this is a metaphor, grows into a holy temple in the Lord. It's a beautiful, beautiful little idea here. And real quick, we got Vader Bear calling in. Vader Bear, what's up, brother? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. How you doing, Sean?
Good. What's up, man? Thanks for calling in.
Okay, so I've been wondering about this. I've wanted to ask you about this for a while, but this kind of like what you're talking about today kind of like sparked it for me, and I remembered. So, okay, so in Matthew 24, like in I guess I'll just start from 15. I'll read a little bit and then I have a question for you. So 15. So when you see the abomination that lays waste, spoken by Daniel the prophet, set up in the set apart place, he who rends, let him understand. Then let those who are in Yadua flee to the mountains. Let him who is in the housetop not come down to take out of his house. And let him who is in the field not return back to get his garments. And woe to those who are pregnant and those who are nursing children in those days. And pray that your flight not take place in the winter or on the Sabbath. For then there shall be great distress, such as not been since the beginning of the world until this time, nor ever shall be. Okay, so it kind of comes into a Torah observance, because a long time I struggled for that, because I was basically taught, the Sabbath is whatever day you make it. Like, as long as you keep one day holy, like, it doesn't matter what day that it's on. And that's so confusing to me back then, because it was like, why is he telling us to pray that your flight does not take in the winter or on the Sabbath? It's like, that's calling out a very specific day and a specific prayer to pray. Right. But then it's like, it could be any day. It's like, hope that it's not your Tuesday Sabbath and not their Wednesday Sabbath. And so that was always very confusing. I would love some clarification from your point of like, and I guess my question also is like, when he's saying pray that your flight not be in the winter on the Sabbath, it's like, obviously there's going to be some people who their flight has to happen on the Sabbath, but like when it comes to winter, it's like, is it going to be in the south when he comes back, or when these things happen, or is the sun going to be in the north when these things happen? Because half of the world will be in winter and half of the world won't. And
well, let's look at the context.
Totally.
I'll put this back on screen. Let's look at what he's saying here. First of all, he's saying, let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we know we're not in the south. We know we're in the northern hemisphere, if you will, the interior circle of the circle of the earth. Okay, as for the wintertime, this is actually great in my understanding, this is great validation to what we've already tried to express here in Kingdom in Context, which is, if you look in the Septuagint, Jeremiah 31:38, it actually talks about Yeshua returning to bring back the saints to Passover.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives us a wonderful qualifier of the season for which he returns.
Okay.
Do you guys know that Passover happens right at the beginning of spring transition? It's still technically winter.
Totally.
In some places, depends on the calendar at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still cold in a lot of places. But this right here is going to be happening over. I mean, this specific moment happens obviously at a specific time, but the season for which this all takes place is going to be leading up to the return of Yeshua, which 42 months leading up to the return of Yeshua, Apollyon is reigning on the earth.
Totally.
The first beast. And the second beast is the false prophet trying to get people to worship Apollyon.
Mm-hmm.
So that means you're going to have three winters that you go through during this persecution, during this 42 months of Apollyon, whereas Revelation 13:7-10 says he's given authority to persecute the saints of all tribes, nations, tongues, and peoples.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be multiple times of winter time that people that might be believers who are in the area of Judea who might go through persecution during this time, but they would have to flee. But specifically at the return of the Lord, what I think this is saying here is he's trying to tell people that are at this time of distress. And this is why I know this hasn't already happened in AD 70.
Totally.
Because there's nothing, this is a one-time event, right? So if the people that try to claim that in AD 70 this already happened, they're kind of, then what do they think that the actual day of the Lord's going to be like? They think it's going to be a walk in the park?
Yeah, there's tons of stuff like that with preterism.
Yeah.
It's like you're completely forgetting everything that hasn't actually happened yet.
Yeah, for sure. So this is why you're going to have, not only, yes, is there going to be believers who do Torah observant. This is what we talk about on our channel often, about the fulfillment of Deuteronomy chapter 30, verses 1-2. This is the moment where Yahweh is calling to mind amongst all the believers scattered out through underneath the heaven.
Mm-hmm.
He's calling to mind his commandments. So this is what's this great awakening of, actual discipleship that happens before the coming of the Lord and before the resurrection. And so this is the same, in this same simultaneous events of time, you also have the great persecution for 42 months of Apollyon show up on the earth, and a lot of havoc is happening, a lot of problems. So there will be persecution both in Judea and across the world. But for those at this specific moment, why let no one go in the field to return for his cloak? It's going to be very difficult for your nursing mother at this time, this great time of distress that's happening, that there's a lot of problems, that if these days of when this distress is happening is not cut short, nobody would be saved. This is because the massive, epic, cataclysmic destruction that happens at the return of Yeshua.
Mm-hmm.
This is why in the same context, he's telling people the return of the Son of Man. They'll tell you that, that Christ is here and there. Don't believe it, because you're not going to see Christ. He's going to be coming like lightning. He's going to be coming back through the firmament like quickly, right? And it's a day of darkness and distress. The powers of the firmament are shaken. The stars are falling to the ground. At that time, they'll see the sign of the Son of Man appear in the heaven. All the tribes of the earth will mourn. This is Revelation 1:7 as well. And he'll send his angels out with a loud trumpet to call and gather the elect from the four winds. That's everyone that's been resurrected at the last trumpet, the seventh trumpet. Mm-hmm. So this is why there's all these, the trumpet judgments leading up to the bowl judgments. There's all these ridiculous things happening in the 42 months of Apollyon, that all of it escalates and gets even more climatic on the actual day of Yeshua's return. So this is where he's telling them, if you see these signs of this happening, Yeshua's return is really imminent. Get out of this land. And the reason why you would get out of this land, specifically this land and not Russia, not Brazil, not Alaska, is because specifically this is where New Jerusalem's going to sit down.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no,
this is the promise of the covenant. So this is why the Joel 3 army and Joel 2 army of the angels, just like in Matthew 13, 49-51, the angels come down and they separate the wicked from the righteous. They burn everything within where the New Jerusalem's going to set down. It's a huge landmass that the angels are going to come down and play Wreck-It Ralph. They're going to destroy everything. Mm-hmm. So this is why they're telling the good people, get out of this place. All right. They're going to search this entire area. The angels are going to search this entire area to clear everybody out, because they got to then burn the land because all the mountains have been raised, the valley's been raised, the mountains have been lowered. The land has been leveled out by earthquake. They're removing all the physical inhabitants of the land, both good and bad. Then they're going to burn the land because it has to be purified so the holy city can set down on it.
Totally. Okay.
So this is why anyone that's good, that's actually Torah observant, that maybe still be living in this region, he's telling you, get out as fast as you can. So, all right, there's another thing that's happening at this moment. This is why Ken Heidebrecht and I did an entire series called The Road to Rescue on the Parable of the Vineyard, where we went over all the component pieces of the Day of the Lord. There's a lot of details happening at one time. At the other time that this is happening, you have the first resurrection is going to take place. So the first resurrection is where if you haven't already died at this point and you're still alive through 42 months of Apollyon, or for one, the Father bless you. You made it through something.
I always say that. I always say, like, I don't know if I'm going to be that person, but blessed is those that get to see his coming. Like, how amazing how amazing to be gifted that from the Father.
Sure, because what's going to happen to those people? So like this person in this scenario, maybe a pregnant woman that tries to flee to the mountains of Judea, she's got to get out of Jerusalem, because Jerusalem also is going to be attacked by the enemies of the earth at that time as well, the forces of Apollyon, the 10 kings. This is why Yeshua comes down, and there's the whole area from Jerusalem all the way to the valley of Megiddo. There's a huge battle. So anyone if a pregnant lady's trying to get out of Jerusalem, she's trying to get to the mountain, flee to the mountains of Judea, because if she's a believer and she's going to be a part of the resurrection and she hasn't died yet. Well, this is what Paul referred to in 1 Corinthians 15:51 and 1 Thessalonians 4:13 through 18, where he says, those who have not fallen asleep, those are the ones that'll be caught up in the dead in Christ rise first. They're given the resurrection bodies. Those who are alive and remain will also be caught up in the air to meet them at Yeshua's coming. So this is where 1 Corinthians 15:51 says, we will not all die. He says, I'll tell you a mystery. We will not all die. Some will be changed in the twinkling of an eye. So that would be this lady in this scenario. She's in the hot zone where the angels are about to come down and do massive battle against the forces of darkness. She needs to get out of the hot zone unless she wants to die. If she wants to die, she'll be dead for maybe, who knows, a few hours before she takes part in the first resurrection. But if you don't want to die and you want to get to a place where you'll be changed in the twinkling of an eye because you're in some sort of safe area to be resurrected on the day of the Lord at the last seventh trumpet. So there's a lot of things. I know it sounds a little convoluted, but this is why when we talk about the gospel of the kingdom, when we talk about the day of the Lord, how it's such a huge topic, and there's all these prophecies about it, describing all these different component pieces that are happening at the same time. It's a big conversation. It really is.
Totally. And I guess the reason why I brought it up and why it's so interesting to me is because, like, I brought this up to my sister. She's Christian. She, I hope that she loves y'all. I don't say I think someone doesn't. But anyways, I hope that she loves y'all. But that's been a point of contention, because I'm like, look, it's literally saying the Sabbath. Like, pray that your flight is not on the Sabbath. Keep the Sabbath holy. And so it's just so interesting to me that people can kind of gloss over that and be like, well, it could be any day. But last question kind of with it would be, do you think that it happens on the Sabbath, or because he's telling us to pray that that our flight is not on the Sabbath? And I know it's for those specific group of people, but do you think that kind of go like for when that day comes for everyone? Like, do you think there will be other people fleeing, or do you think it's specifically those in the area around Judea that it's giving that warning to, I should say? Yeah.
Well, the mountains of Judea is a large territory geographically. It's not just Jerusalem. You see what I'm saying? So there's going to be a lot of people fleeing. If you're, for a variety of reasons. For one, of the invading armies of the 10 kings are coming in to besiege Jerusalem. And two, if you're a believer and you're on the know, then you're going to be trying to get out because you realize the day of the Lord's about to happen.
Totally.
You don't want to be there. So this is why the enemy is gathering there, because they know he's returning there and they're trying to fight him at his return. You don't want to be in that crossfire.
That's when the second bad aliens are coming.
Right.
The actual good aliens, the good aliens. But yeah. It's crazy how convoluted that is, and how they've kind of set us up, for that perfect spike of that deception coming down. Not from them, not from Yeshua, but you get what I mean.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yes, they definitely want to trick everybody to think that Yeshua's return is a bad thing when it actually happens. So,
Oh,
yeah. Hannibal's here too. Vader
Yep.
Bear, you're welcome to stick around. We've got quite a few people calling in. Hannibal, what's up, brother? Did you have a question?
Not really. I just wanted to answer your question at the beginning of this broadcast about the part in Josephus where it spoke about the Canaanites knew the promise that had been given and that they started fortifying when they heard that the Israelite had come out of Egypt. And I think that's Antiquities of the Jews, book 5, chapter 1, verse 20.
Awesome.
I had to do some digging to find it. So I just wanted to say that. And also mentioning the part about Moses giving Hosea the name Joshua. I recently read Irenaeus, the demonstrations of apostolic preachings, or teachings maybe it is, and in that book, chapter 27, he said that Moses had the name revealed to him at that time, and gave that name to him in hopes that he would return safely, because he knew that that name or authority was the one through everyone would be saved through that authority later on. So that's an interesting. I don't know if Irenaeus had access to any books that we don't have access to today, but that was interesting.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's a good thought. That's a good thought. And thank you about the quote from Josephus, because I couldn't find it. I was looking for it late last night, and I knew I'd read it before. I just couldn't remember where I read it. So
yeah, it's
awesome.
Also in verse 16 in the very same chapter, and I had it on my mind because I recently watched your the Canaanites took the land through sedition, or you need to upload those PowerPoints to the Patreon, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, that was everything. Yeah, Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Okay, brother. Yeah, we also have thank you for calling in, Hannibal. KJ47 is back with us. What's up, brother?
Hey, good afternoon, guys. Yeah, I just had a quick question for you, Sean, if I could jump in here.
Yeah, go ahead, brother.
Trying to talk to somebody about the bride. I watched your videos on the bride countless times now, and I keep getting this Ephesians 5:25 thrown at me. So can you explain specifically the part, it's actually verse 27, that says that he might present the church to himself, a glorious church. So can you just break that down a little bit more?
Yeah, that was what I tried to reference in part 2 of the Bride series, where I talk about Romans 7, 1-4, the idea that the priest receives the people. So the job of the high priest was that he, like on the Day of Atonement, remember he made atonement for the corporate congregation of all of Israel. So the people, remember in Exodus 23, it says 3 feasts a year, your males shall come and present themselves to the Lord. Well, the Lord's not technically there, so they're presenting themselves to the priest because he's the mediator on behalf of the people. The priest then evaluates them. Are they clean? Are they ready? Do they bring their sacrifice? Is it what it's supposed to be? The priest has to go through the details of like, all right, well, you've presented yourself to me. Now I can then in turn say, you're good. I'm going to go to the Father and make atonement for you. So we are presented to Christ, spotless and blameless. He then in turn at the resurrection says to the Father, I've got everybody you gave me. Because he's our great shepherd.
Right.
He's our high priest. That's a part of his job. So therefore he is, this is why husbands love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave him up so to sanctify her, cleansing her by the washing with the water of the word, to present her to himself as a glorious church without stain or wrinkle or any such blemish, but holy and blameless. That happens at the resurrection. And that happens when he then receives us and says to the Father, I've got all the kids now. I've got everybody, all the goats, all the lambs. They're all mine. They're all under my authority. And I vouch for them. They're good. I've made sure they're clean, without wrinkle, spot, and blemish. And here we are, Father. That's why he's our conduit. That's why at the wedding supper of the Lamb, he's the bride, or excuse me, he's the bridegroom. We're just the guests.
Right.
We're under his authority. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I follow that absolutely.
So that type of argument that you hear from people that, which is just one of the supplementary misunderstandings that have led people to that misaligned bride doctrine, is they don't understand the priesthood in general, much less how Yeshua enacts that priesthood over us at the resurrection. Okay.
Yeah, that was what I was going to follow up with, is just to say, so people don't understand this. It's just because they don't understand the concept of priesthood, and then you beat me to it. So I think, Sean, that's all I had.
That's why I lovingly try to share with people, look, man, this Old Testament thing, God has to be our first priority.
Right.
It helps us understand Yeshua that much better, and that's where most of the conversations with people, the disagreements with people arise, is that you start really asking them just pointed questions about, trying to pick apart why they believe what they believe in certain doctrines like you're talking about, and you realize they haven't read the Old Testament.
Yeah. Understood. All right. Well, I know you got a crowd coming in, so I'll hop off. Thanks for answering the questions.
Yeah. Thanks, KJ. I hope that was helpful.
So
What's
my wife had a couple of questions for you, Sean.
What's up, Vader? Go ahead.
She really wants that context book. So she's like, when is it going to be out? That was one question. I know you're still working on it, and I will tell her that exact same thing. But the second question is, she said, do you have a recommendation for a good resource for the apocryphal books? She wants something physical, something she can hold in her hands and read. She's not opposed to looking online. Like, I know Sacred Texts and stuff like that has it, but do you have a good recommendation there? And then the third is, she wanted to know your feelings on the Ethiopian Bible.
Okay, wait a minute. What was the first?
The first is, when is your context Bible coming out?
Okay. That's going to take a while, because that's something I'm actively working on. So as I've been announcing in all the videos, that's like a year-long project.
Yeah, and I told her that if we do the Patreon thing or equivalent, because you said that if we don't do the Patreon thing, we can find another way to do it, that you'll basically give us access to that as you're developing it, and that you'll also give us a free book with that tier of the $20 family tier on Patreon. Yeah,
after 12 months. Yeah. So that's the best way I could allow people to have early access before I'm finished, because like you and your wife, a lot of people have been asking, man, I'd like to have that now. And I'm like, well,
I can't just make it go like that.
It's like I could have not announced it for a year and just worked on it privately, or I could announce it because I had to announce it because I don't have the money to get it published. So that's why I did the fundraiser. And I was like, hey guys, if you want to help as a community, if we want to get this project done, I need your help. And so while I'm working on it, you can have access to it at the $20 family tier level. But secondly, unfortunately, no, there's no good there's no single resource there's no single book that's been printed that has all the apocryphals in there that I would want to include myself. I know like the Sefer, they have one of their appendum books that has several of the apocryphals in there, but that's in addition to some of the apocryphals that were already put in the original Sefer. So you still got to buy 2 books. Unfortunately, no, that's not there yet. It will be included in mine, but I haven't found a single published book that has all of them in there that I would recommend. I'm sorry. So number 3 is the Ethiopian Bible has their own traditions, just like a lot of other countries around the world. They have more books. They have books that I think are fascinating. But then they also have writings from their church fathers from 1800 years ago that they've included in there as well. So again, this is where we start running into the definition of the word Bible.
Mm-hmm.
That's a term in our modern language that we think Bible means a book of like a finalized book that has a certain amount of information in it that is from God. That's what we think.
Once you find this book, you don't need any other books. I think we all want that, because we all want to be like, okay, I have it all right here so I can understand. But I guess there is a beauty of having to search it out, right? Because like that's where all of us that are in this truth journey trying to have our heart after Yah's is like it is his burden is light, right? His yoke is light, but it is a cross to bear. It is something that you have to consistently work at and keep moving that cross down the path. So I totally understand that. So before I'll get going, I know I've been on here for a while, but I do want to kind of talk to something that's a little off topic about what you've talked about before when it comes to the beast out of the earth and the beast out of the sea and stuff. And I kind of wanted to throw some of my canon, my mind canon past you and kind of see if I need to maybe pick it apart in a different area. But you know what? I'll let the guy that jumped in go first, and then I'll kind of hang around if you don't mind, or I can go now. It's up to
you. I thought you were in mid-question. Go ahead, bro. Beaver Swim, I appreciate you calling in. I don't know. You keep jumping off the stream. I don't know if it's your phone cell signal or what, but if that happens again, just try to call back in, brother. We're going to take Vader's last question, and then I'll grab you, okay?
Okay, so from my understanding how it comes, specifically talking about Revelation and the star that was given the key to the shaft of the bottomless pit, and when he opens from it, all that jazz, we know locusts come from it, lotus come from it, and their king is Nimrod by different names. And so, so I had this interesting thought last night where, so my generalized story is when that thing opens, most of the world who aren't like seeking after Yah's hearts are going to think they're aliens. They're going to be tricked. They're going to be tortured for the 5 months or whatever like that. And so I kind of put two things together. So so my question is, like, do you see it that like we've been prepped for this whole alien thing? When that event happens, it gets opened and these lotus come out, and then that will be like, oh, those are the bad aliens, and that will kind of happen for 5 months, and then the good aliens, like the fallen angels, will come. They will be like, okay, these are the first, this is the first fight we have, but we got another that's coming, their master that's stronger, kind of like lying about it, and that they will kind of change the world for this new, like kind of bringing it to a utopia, and then warring and gearing up for everyone else of Yeshua's return, and them getting ready to fight the actual bad, like not the actual, but their perceived bad aliens, right? Like, do you think that's kind of how they're going to, and I know you're not saying this is exactly going to happen, but is that kind of your idea of how those things will transpire?
For
If
the
that made any sense.
in a generalized way, if I'm following what you're saying, yeah, I think that Revelation 9 is going to be the revealing of Apollyon. The kings of the earth will know who it is, but he'll be introduced as, you know, aliens showing up to help us. And part of that helping us will be something that the things that go with him go out and attack people, because there'll be people that will resist. So therefore, he'll then be a part of one of the first and second trumpet, where he goes out to make war against the nations. So then this happens, in my understanding, this Revelation 9 moment happens at the beginning of his reign, which is 42 months. This is why he's given 42 months. So he's only here for a short time. But the things that he's going out to mess with people that torments him as if it's the sting of a scorpion for 5 months, that's him trying to conscript, if you will, the people into his, you know, there's some sort of genetic modification going on there. There's some sort of something that happens with the people that they're in pain for 5 months. And I think that's a part of whatever he offers when he shows up to people to help them. You know what I'm saying?
Do you think the lotus are like going to be actual things? Like actual beings?
Actual chimeras. Yeah, I'm going to go over this in greater depth in my Investigate Babylon series. That's why
I love that series, by the way. It's so good, man.
Yeah, this is why I talked about chimera scorpions. I think it was part 6 or part 7, and I talked about the history of Nimrod pertaining to chimera scorpions, because this was a chimera that they had back in the day, and this is exactly the kind of chimera we see in Revelation 9 coming with him. So there were all kinds of chimeras back in the day, but this was one specifically, especially also the half man, half horse. I think they're called centaurs. So
Centaur,
yeah. So basically, there's a lot of things that are going down that are really weird. Sounds like science fiction in Revelation, but I think modern science is bringing us to a point, or at least what modern science is revealing through the public news, is it bringing us to a point to realize, like, this has been knowledge that, you know, the occult has always had, and they're choosing a specific time to bring it back, and it's so they can be in step with the revealing of Apollyon to try to take over the world.
And those that are after Yah's hearts, they're going to see those things and understand what they are. They're not, I personally thought about it. I was like, I don't think I'm going to fear them, because I know who their king is. I know that my king has authority over him, that he's just going to be wiped away with the splendor of my Lord's coming. And that a lot of the people who are kind of don't believe in biblical cosmology, a lot of those people are going to be super fearful of these things, going to have no idea what they are. They're going to just believe, excuse me, they're just going to believe whatever they're told. Like, oh, these are aliens. And they're going to be like, boom, the world is a globe because there's alien. And then I kind of tie it into those who love the lie, the Second Thessalonians, that God will send down them in a strong delusion, that those that do not love the truth will believe in that lie. So yeah, anyways, I really appreciate your time, and you can kind of fish me off with your comments there, but I'll jump off and let others come in who are coming in. So you're awesome, Sean. Dude, I've learned so much from you, man, and I know a lot of people have, but it's like, it's always, I always feel like it's our privilege and our duty to let those know, the men who are bringing this type of knowledge to and wisdom to the people. Like, you got a beautiful crown that you're going to be casting at his feet. That's all I got to say.
No, man, I appreciate it. Hopefully, I just trying to do my best. I feel burdened with not being able to reach enough people, which is, Lord willing, Lighthouse is going to be able to launch along the timeline that they're hoping, and get everything done and not be taken down, and and just because that might give an opportunity to reach more people for me personally, in addition to a whole bunch of other people. But just the idea of my wife and I, when we kind of surveyed the landscape of what we wanted to talk about when we started our channel, we realized to ourselves that we're coming out trying to talk about the gospel kingdom of God, which nobody hardly understands, because no church has been teaching it at any point. Like, they've been just teaching the cross week in and week out, and which is great, which is needed, which is good. But at the same time, like, you're missing the rest of the story. So that's why, if they don't understand the gospel of the kingdom and how Jesus talked about it and the prophets before him, they get to Revelation, they just have to start making up all these wild interpretations. So as a result of that,
I was going to say, kind of like you said before, you can't pick any book in the world. If you start in the middle of the book, you're not going to have the context of the story that's going on. Like, you're like, what is going on? I have no idea. I'll just figure it out in my head instead of starting from the beginning of the book.
Yeah. And that's where, just, we knew coming in that we were going to be talking about a niche of a topic amongst a niche of a demographic. So that's why, I've always tried to figure out, creative ways to have videos and do shows and collaborate with other people and do debates and do different things that hopefully would draw attention. But on the back end, what most people can't see in my YouTube dashboard, the things I see with videos that get demonetized or they get taken out of the advertising rotation for no reason, that means that they're not being suggested to people. It's not about the money. I don't care about the $4 that YouTube sends me for every 3,000 views I get. It's not about the money. It's about getting it into the eyes of other people through the rotation. So if they take you out of the advertising rotation, then they're not going to suggest your video to anybody. That's why if you go to my channel, you see a lot of my videos, they stop at like 3,000 or 4,000 views, right? Because they've taken them out of rotation once they figured out what I was talking about. It's part of the censorship, So
sure.
Yeah, it's rough, man. It's horrible. In fact, the Uncommon Ground series that we do on Wednesday night, we got that one taken down because of some copyright thing. So it was over on DLive, and people were asking for the link to the DLive because we simulcasted to DLive. We had like 1,300 people in the first day, in the first 24 hours on DLive, and we never get that on YouTube. In the first 24 hours of the show going up, it was crazy. So I don't know. I don't know if I can trust any of the numbers that I actually see on my channel, and whether they're real or not. But the idea is that it's a burden, because I feel like I appreciate what you're saying, your kind words, and I feel like this message, like, it makes the Bible so easy if people just understand, biblical cosmology, which is a huge part of the gospel of the kingdom that Jesus talked about. If you just understand these ideas, put them together, all these passages start to make easy sense. Revelation starts to make sense. But a lot of people have been told all their life to reinterpret the Bible as soon as they read it.
Totally.
Right. There's even people in the chat right now doing that right now.
Like in Genesis, if you can't start off trusting what Yah says and how he says it, and he's saying what he means and means what he says, then you have to interpret everything else. And that's what really started me down, besides the flat earth, was Bereshit, a study into that word in the pre-Babylonian, where it was like, I used to say this before I even knew about Bereshit. I literally used to say, I'd ask people in reference to biblical cosmology, I'd say, where does truth begin in the Bible? Like, in the beginning. That's literally where the truth begins, in the beginning in Bereshit. And then if you have to interpret, the first book of the Bible, then of course you have to interpret everything else, because it doesn't coalesce. It doesn't meet together. But
that's why I want to have Kent Hovind on. Everybody go blast Ken Hoven's his page. Tell him to have a conversation with Kingdom of Context.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And the last thing is like, dude, I know you've got a million props for this, and I'm not saying, whoa, everyone come see how good Sean looks, which you do look good. Is that thing that you did with Jaron as a man? Like, I've watched Jaron for a long time. I think he's a smart man when it comes to the facts and things that are observable. He's awesome. So to just you be that kind of light to him, where it was almost like he was trying to extinguish your flame, right? He was trying to bring up these things to make you go, I've been wrong. And it's like seeing the firmness you have standing on Yah, on his rock, is just, it was a very blessing to me. It gave me a lot of, it made me humble, be like, okay, this is how I need to talk to my sister and to my mom and to my family. It's like, I need to be loving and patient with them. It's like, it doesn't need to be a shouting match. It does, even if they say things that are absurdly, not true, to stay in the moment and to love them anyways. Like, dude, everyone that's watching this channel knows that it's like, they've been so blessed from you. I've been blessed from you. My family's been blessed from you. And just like I told Austin, I love Austin with it. I will throw you some shekels and some shillings when I'm able to.
Sure, brother. It's no problem. Not worried about it.
Yeah, no, I know, but I want to bless you because I know you're blessing other people, and it's so amazing. But anyways, I've been here.
Well, hey, I want to encourage you, if you're trying to talk to friends and family and you find yourself getting frustrated because you run into some cog dis and it's heavy, and sometimes the cog dis, as you saw, it can be even mixed with like actual depressing discouragement, right?
Totally.
Because they don't have an answer, so therefore they hate the fact that you claim to have the answer, right? So they want to then bring you down to their level, kind of thing. I always just encourage other men, go sign up for a martial arts class and get kicked in the face. It sounds crazy, but that's what's helped me develop my patience that you see when I do debates. It's because
Nice.
I got punched and kicked in the face to the point where I no longer, when it happens verbally, because even in fights, like you're trash talking during a fight too, like a real fight too. So when it happens verbally, whether physical or verbally, I'm still thinking. So that's what you're training when you're fighting. When warriors are training, even though swords are swinging at you, staff is swinging at you, or a punch is swinging at you, you may take a blow from time to time, but you've got to be still thinking while you're taking that blow, while you're getting kicked in the side or kicked in the face, like my nose broken once, like while you're seeing those toenails come at your face, you've got to be thinking, what am I going to do after I get hit? Because you already resign yourself to the idea that I'm going to get hit, but I'm going to be okay. What am I going to do next? Right? So I try to transition that mentality into when people are coming at me with bad hermeneutics, straw man arguments, accusations, denigrating statements, subtle jabs to try to, all this kind of stuff that you see atheists will do. I'm like, yeah, all right, I'll take it, absorb it, move on, because I'm still thinking of a greater strategy as I'm trying to go. And that's just something I picked up from doing martial arts for a long time. So totally. That's what I lovingly and not joking, seriously encourage. Spend $100, take 2 classes, get punched in the face. Every young man needs to get it sounds so silly. Every young man needs to get punched or kicked in the face at one point, so he can realize it's okay. It doesn't hurt that bad. It's not the end of the world, and you need to learn how to think through that.
Yeah, I definitely need it. I grew up with 2 older brothers, so I've been punched in the face many times. So I totally get you. And I was in martial arts. I should get back into it, probably just like at least alone for fitness, but kind of trying to transcribe that mentality of like being ready for it and understanding that it's going to come. It's like if you're on the battlefield and you get cut and then all you're doing is focusing on your cut, then you're not doing the right thing. Yeah. You need to be focusing on the big picture, not the little picture. So
yeah, I played a football game with broken ribs one time, just thought I was sore, right? Didn't realize I actually had broken ribs. So, that's the way, just the mentality you got to have, because people will come at you with all types of nastiness. They don't know the word. They don't know, or they're just so indoctrinated from the world's lies, people we love even. And they just don't know what they're saying sometimes, So Yeshua had that same mentality. He's literally hanging on the cross like, Father, they don't know what they're doing. Please forgive them.
Yeah, and I've tried to change, like, my perspective is changing, like realizing those that aren't walking with Yah, it's like they're suffering. So pray for them, try to uplift them, not say you're wrong, I don't believe in you, like you're stupid, whatever, all that nonsensical stuff. Let's see the true issues that they're suffering and how to, because all suffering is for us to bring closer to Yah. So he's trying to point out something to them and they're ignoring it, so they continue going through it. But anyways, dude, love you. Have a great Sabbath, and I'll see you later. Bye.
Hey, you gonna be on Take on the World?
No. What date? I live in Utah, so that's kind of far
you're
away
you're pretty far away. I got you.
Yeah, and I won't. I have 4 kids, so I won't
That's
get
tough.
on a plane. So
that's tough. Yeah,
with the situation, and then driving that far is just
that's
so
a big
far,
commitment.
so.
I got you, bro. It's all good, man.
But I am going to Feast of Tabernacles up in Utah, in Bear Lake, Utah. Which I'm gonna. So that whole group, just a little quick thing. That whole group, I go to Sabbath service with. I go there in an hour. They do at 2 p.m. But I've been doing. So I started with Bear Sheet. I talked about Rakia. The last time I talked about all the different events, prophecies, and things that has to do with biblical cosmology. And like one of the guys, like who I call my mentor, he works for L3 Harris, which is like a satellite aero industry company. And like, he's even like, well, I put satellites up there, so I know that they exist. Right. And it's like very hard. I'm like, this is where I'm kind of talking about that patience, is to be able to love someone who I know loves y'all, but talk to them without getting in anger. But anyways, thanks you, bro. Have a good one.
Yeah. Thank you, Vader Bear. Talk to you next time. I don't know if Beaver's Weem is still with us. He's been in the studio, but his camera's off, so I don't know if he can hear us or see us. I think he was having some trouble.
Can you hear me?
Oh, okay. Hey, buddy, I hear you. What's up, man?
I think the video was just too much for my cell reception, so I cut it
okay.
off.
Okay. What's up, man? Did you have a question? Thanks for waiting.
Yeah, I got 2 questions.
Okay.
The first one is about the rich man and Lazarus parable.
Okay.
So about the whole, hell being the concept of hell and the second death being not like an eternal torture chamber, more of you're just burned up and out of the game.
Well, that's the lake of fire. Hell is the word for Sheol, which is the actual container area in the earth for disembodied souls.
All right, perfect. That's where I'm going, because the thing about the parable that's I'm still a little confused about. I think I've heard you, correct me if I've heard it wrong. I think I heard you say something about, that parable, the guy is on kind of the rough side of Sheol.
Yeah, he's on the unrighteous side of Sheol.
Okay, so there's a righteous and an unrighteous part of Sheol. Now, how do you get, how are people determined to be on one side or the other if this is
your
occurring
life
before the judgment? So is there like a pre-judgment happening?
Well, yeah, the angels wrote down everything you do in this life, so they already know where you're going.
Oh, okay.
The judgment that you actually stand before Yeshua, that's the official, because that's where he's going to give you eternal life, or you're going to be thrown in the lake of fire. And there's 2 judgments for the righteous, right? There's the first resurrection, and then there's the second resurrection. In both of those, there will be people that will be called righteous and given eternal life. Only in the second resurrection will the wicked also be resurrected and be thrown into the lake of fire and distinguished from existence forever. So they're not burning forever. There may be a few seconds of burning, but and I actually there's some other verses in Enoch. I think it's Enoch. It's either Enoch 90 or Enoch 64, 65, 56. I'm sorry, I don't have it off the top of my head. There's places in Enoch where it makes me think that the lake of fire moment, they're not actually thrown in alive like the beast and the false prophet are, but the average person is then killed and their bodies are thrown into the lake of fire, so their body and soul is destroyed. So I'm getting a little technical, but the point is, the Sheol container that's described in Enoch 22, and as a separation for righteous souls and unrighteous souls. So in the Luke 16 parable, verses 19 through 241, Yeshua is expounding upon someone that had died named Lazarus, and he went down, and there was someone that had already died before him that was considered unrighteous, and he was put in the unrighteous side. So this is why the angels, they already know which way you're going, basically, because this is the part a lot of people really struggle with. And that's why it's such a great question you're asking, is emphatically throughout the scriptures, even in Yeshua's own words, he said, Matthew 12:38, you'll be judged for every idle word and deed. Just like in Romans chapter 7, Paul even talks about it in Romans chapter 2, verses 14 through 16, that you will be either condemned or affirmed on the day that you're judged by your secrets, right? So the Father already knows everything you did. He already knows which way you're going. The official moment that it's made official is when you actually get to stand before Yeshua and either get resurrected to eternal life or you're thrown in the lake of fire. And that, depending on how you lived your life, will depend on which of those resurrections you take part in.
Okay.
So that's where, just like in, man, this is a really poor analogy, I guess, because it's a human one, in like a American justice system, but just like in certain capacities where if there is a crime and the people that are trying to, it's a rough metaphor, but say death.
I see where you're going with it.
Say death is the arrestor.
Okay.
Say death is the thing that arrests you, stops you, right? So the police arrest you because they're investigating, evaluating the circumstance. So they want to arrest you, means stop your movement, right, and have you in custody. That's like what Sheol is. Death is the arresting moment where you're stopped, you're placed into, your soul is placed into custody. Now, the people that do the arresting, which are the angels that take you to Sheol, they already know because they've been a part of this group that's already been observing your whole life, every word and deed.
Right.
So they already know basically whether you're complicit to the point of guiltiness or whether you've had someone make atonement for you and know that, well, we're going to keep him in holding, but he's going to get out and it's going to be okay. Whereas the other people that keep in holding, when they get out, they go to their actual sentence. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's a rough analogy, but
I see where you're. So if you get there, if you cross over and you're sweating it out, then you realize I'm not getting the eternal life, and that's where the weeping and gnashing of teeth come in, right?
Yeah, the dude that's sad, he's in emotional torment, as the Apocalypse of Baruch also expounds about those in Sheol that will see those in the resurrection get resurrected, and they'll be inflamed all the more in anguish, because the only thing left they have to fear is expectation of the lake of fire, which is the torment of the flame. So it's an emotional torment, which is what that word is used for in the Greek in Luke 16. It's emotional torment that guy's in expectation of the flame, because the flame is the only thing left for him. He's not going to get resurrected. He knows he's not. He tells Lazarus, go tell my family not to come to this place. He knows that he deserves where he's supposed to be, and the only thing left is that he'll be destroyed in the lake of fire, even his soul. So, which is the collection of his mind, will, emotions, memories, experiences, that kind of thing. So that's why Yeshua tells us in Matthew 10:28 that the body in the lake of fire in Gehenna, not hell, but Gehenna. So you have to look at the translations. Sometimes they translate it that very lazily in that verse. But that Greek word in Matthew 10:28 is the word Gehenna. The body and the soul are destroyed in Gehenna. So that's why at the resurrection of the righteous and the wicked, which is the second resurrection at the end of the millennial reign, everyone that has lived and died at the millennial reign will be resurrected, and all the wicked that have lived all the way since Adam are all resurrected. The righteous are given eternal life, and all the wicked, they're going to be brought back to real bodies so they can stand before Yeshua, but they're not eternal life bodies. They're regular bodies, just like Lazarus was brought and resurrected back to a regular body. Then that regular body and that soul that inhabits that regular body are sentenced to the lake of fire, where both body and soul are destroyed forever. There's no more consciousness. You're not reanimated like a video game. You're not brought back to life to be tormented again and killed again. It doesn't work like that. You're done. You're out of the game. No more for you. That's what the lake of fire is all about, which is why the angels are even thrown in there. You see what I'm saying? Because they're eternal. They have eternal bodies, not made of dirt. They don't die like us. That's why they have to be destroyed in that place too. This is why the lake of fire is in the valley right next to Yeshua's throne, according to the book of Enoch. Because you don't want people accidentally getting to this place. You'd be taken out of existence.
Got it.
Yeah, the lake of fire, if I could give a modern day analogy, it's the Thanos ring. It's the Thanos
while you
snap.
explaining it? Like can you see in these movies about like medieval warfare, at the end of the battle, there's a giant fire and they're throwing all the bodies on top of it. It sounds kind of like that after the resurrection.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned that passage in Enoch. I can't remember the actual address, but it talks about how bodies will be piled up at the return of the Son of Man, and there's an allusion in there to what makes me think it's not the first resurrection event, but it could still happen with the goats, though, at the Matthew 25 sheep and goats judgment, because all the goats will be killed with the sword by the angels. But it also could be happening at the actual Great White Throne judgment, where the wicked are resurrected back to a body. They're handed to the angels for punishment, meaning they're run through with the sword. They're dead and thrown in the lake of fire because, just my speculation with the limited information I'm working with. So,
okay. So
yeah,
the second question kind of follows through on this. So when you're resurrected and you have the law written on your heart, you said that as you won't sin anymore, or it'll kind of be automatically. You'll know the right thing to do. I'm trying to understand how that interacts with when Satan is released again after the 1,000-year reign, and more people will be deceived. Are these people that are outside of the New Jerusalem, or can you?
Those are the people that have been repopulating the earth during millennial reign, living outside the New Jerusalem. They're regular mortals. They did not take part in the first resurrection.
Right.
They survived the day of the Lord, but they were unbelievers. But they were deemed sheep at the Matthew 25 sheep and goat judgment when Yeshua actually comes down to the ground with his kingdom and draws all the nations to him for judgment. So that's why the Matthew 25 happens at the beginning of millennial reign. Those who are deemed sheep, they get to live. So this is like when any king takes over a nation, you come in, you have all the people of that nation come before you, and you evaluate how can you either can use these people or you can weed out those who are seditious. Right. So at the Matthew 25 sheep and goat judgment, he deems those people as sheep, as those who exemplified Torah behaviors in their life, following their conscience, even without having the knowledge of God, even without having the knowledge of Christ. That's why they say, when did we do these things for you? When did we do these things? We don't. And then he's like, to the least of my brethren that you did these, you did them to me. And everything he listed off for those people are exemplified in Torah in the Old Testament. The other people were called goats. They're killed. So their bodies will go to the Sheol for the 1,000 years. They'll be taking part in the second resurrection of the wicked at the end of the millennial reign. But those sheep then repopulate the earth throughout the millennial reign and interact with the resurrected saints living inside the New Jerusalem, coming to the city to learn good behavior, which is Torah, coming to the city for feast days and for Sabbaths. They'll be the ones that will repopulate and rebuild the earth, and we're going to teach them how to do that and live in peace. They then will be still mortal and still be susceptible to temptation because they don't have this glorified, incorruptible body with the law permanently written on their heart. They'll just have 1,000 years of being taught in discipleship to do their best to defend themselves from deception when Satan is released. And unfortunately, some of them will not do well with that, and they'll fall prey to that deception. Because everyone needs a test. The Father always is testing mankind, whether it's in your heart to keep his commandments or not. Everyone that lives throughout the millennial reign that's mortal, they have this incredible environment of peace with no unclean spirits running around and no Satan running around trying to tempt anybody. And all these resurrected saints with this royal priesthood going out and teaching them how to walk in love. They're going to have the most pristine environment ever. No natural disasters, no sickness, no diseases. That's why in Isaiah and Zechariah it talks about the person that dies at the age of 100 will be as if he was a child. It'll be a great sadness because everyone's going to have access to the water of life that flows out of the New Jerusalem, and they're going to start living long ages again like before the flood. There's a lot to it, brother. I'm trying to give you a super cliff notes, but there's a lot to it. So there's
some specific question about the verse that says he'll deceive even the elect, and I'm trying to understand it. Who are the elect in that scenario? Is this all pre?
Yeah, that's pre-day of the Lord, pre-second coming.
Okay, so if you're in the first resurrection and you're locked in, that's how I'm understanding this. Is that right?
If you're say that one more time, you're kind of hard to hear.
So if you're in the first resurrection, you're basically locked in for eternal life. There's no being deceived after that point.
Right. Yeah, because you've got your incorruptible body, you got the law written on your heart, you fulfill the promise of 1 Enoch 5, 6 through 9. You'll live forever. You'll live in his kingdom. You'll never sin again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. That was it.
Yeah. Yeah, brother. Appreciate you calling in.
Yep. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too, man.
Thank you, brother. All right, guys. We're going to end the show. I appreciate everybody calling. Actually, you know what? I think, 1 second. Okay. You know what? We're already at 2.5 hours. Let's keep going. I have all these I got to get to that are important for today's passage, companion passages. So let's get to these real quick. I won't take any more calls, and then we'll finish up the show. So here in the Testament of Judah 24, 5 and 6, also verse 25, 1 through 5, it says, "Then shall the scepter of my kingdom shine forth, and from your roots," this is from the Testament of Judah, "from your root shall arise a stem," that's speaking of Yeshua, "and from it shall grow a rod of righteousness to the Gentiles, to judge and to save all that call upon the Lord." Now, why is this important, guys? This is because what we're talking about in Numbers 15 and Ephesians chapter 2, people being grafted in faith and belief, even from the nations not born of Israel. This is the promise of the Messiah, that he, during this time of his priesthood, word's going to spread even faster about what it means to know who God is, and his son came as a high priest. This is the behavior you should practice, which is the Torah. This is why it says he grows as a rod of righteousness. That word is directly related to Torah. It means you're doing the behavior of the Father, which is Torah. And that behavior is being shared to the Gentiles. This is how he will be able to judge and save all that call upon him. Chapter 25, verse 1 through 5, it says, "And after these things shall Abraham and Isaac and Jacob arise unto life." That's the resurrection. "And I and my brethren shall be chiefs of the tribe of Israel. Levi first, I second, Joseph third, Benjamin fourth, Simeon fifth, Issachar sixth, and so all in order. And the Lord blessed Levi, and the angel of the presence, me, the powers of glory, and Simeon the heaven, and Reuben the earth, Issachar the sea, Zebulun the mountains, Joseph the tabernacle, Benjamin the luminaries, Dan, Eden, Naphtali the sun, Gad the moon, Asher, and you shall all be people of the Lord and have one tongue." So this is interesting, guys. If you look in verse 3, you shall all be people of the Lord and have one tongue. This is actually what Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 8 and 9 is all about as well. This is the Testament of Judah. So this is before Moses. This is the Judah, the son of Israel. He already knew the promise of the resurrection and how the curse of Genesis 11 and the multiple languages will be done away. And everyone takes part in the resurrection will be able to speak the tongue. And if you believe Jubilees, then Jubilees claims that the tongue of heaven and of creation is Hebrew, is original Hebrew. So we'll all speak that at the resurrection. "And there shall be no spirit of deceit of Beliar, for he shall be cast in the fire forever. And they who have died in grief shall arise in joy. And they who are poor for the Lord's sake shall be made rich. And they who are put to death for the Lord's sake shall awake to life. And the hearts of Jacob shall run in joyfulness, and the eagles of Israel shall fly in gladness, and all the people shall glorify the Lord forever." Such a beautiful promise. Even Judah knew about it. Joshua chapter 6, what do we see? We see this grafting in process from Numbers 15. We see Joshua obeying this idea immediately in his authority when he reigns after Moses dies. And they go into Jericho, and they have to deal with Rahab and her family, who help them and they're overcoming Jericho. He allows her to be grafted in. Check this out. Joshua 6, 23 to 25. And she's a Canaanite, by the way, guys. "But the two men who had spied out the land, Joshua said, Go into the prostitute's house and bring out from there the woman and all who belong to her, as you swore to her. So the young men who had been spies went in and brought out Rahab and her father and mother and brothers and all who belonged to her. And they brought all her relatives and put them outside the camp of Israel. And they burned the city with fire and everything in it. Only the silver and gold and the vessels of bronze and iron they put into the treasury of the house of the Lord. But Rahab, the prostitute of her father's household, and all who belonged to her, Joshua saved alive. And she has lived in Israel to this day, because she hid the messengers whom Joshua sent to spy out Jericho." So she lived in Israel too. I don't know when the book of Joshua was written. I don't know who wrote it. It wasn't Joshua. But whoever wrote it, I'm guessing it's shortly after the events of Joshua, within 10, 20 years, because Rahab's still alive and she's living with the Israelites still. She's grafted in, guys. She's grafted in. And here's the interesting part. Did Rahab come to a profession of belief? Did she outwardly state, oh, we want to serve Yahweh and come into covenant with him? No, she said, we'd heard about your God, and people are in fear because we heard about what you guys did in Egypt. And he's the God of heaven and earth. So she did acknowledge early in Joshua chapter 2, I believe, that she understood who Yahweh was, and she was willing to help them. So it's not just simply that she believed in God. She was willing to follow it up with their actions to actually help accomplish the purposes of the Father, doing the will of the Father, doing his commandments, even though she wasn't at Mount Sinai with these others to get into the covenant, right? To be affirmed and renewed of the covenant with the children of Israel. She definitely wasn't a descendant of Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob. She's a Canaanite. But she's a prostitute, which was common, for that society, because they had the Baal worships where they would have male and female prostitutes at the temples. So this lady is wanting to repent. She knows the deal. This life, this society, they worship Molek and Baal, and her job is temple prostitute. Possibly she could have just been a regular prostitute. Or you come into Israel where you can't do any of that stuff, and you help Israel because you believe, and you're willing to go through the actions to show how much you believe. She repented, guys. She grafted in. So then, this is why James would speak like he does in James chapter 2, 21 through 26. He says, was not Abraham our father justified by works when he offered up his son Isaac on the altar? You see, that faith was active along with his works, and faith was completed by his works. And the scriptures was fulfilled that says Abraham believed God, it was counted him as righteousness, and he was called a friend of God. James is trying to tell us that in the moment where, before Isaac was even born, and Yahweh appeared to Abraham in the form of an angel, and Genesis 15, they did the covenant. He said, look to the stars, I'll make your descendants as great as that, which means you have to have a son at some point. That happened years before Isaac was even born. So this is why James is saying the scripture was fulfilled. So what the angel promised Abraham was fulfilled in the moment that Abraham believed God and it was counted to him as righteousness, that this promise was going to happen. And therefore he was called a friend of God. But all of that wasn't solidified and filled until after Isaac is born, and he's tested on whether he would give Isaac to the father or not. Now, it was a test. Hebrews 11 tells us very clearly this was a test. The father does not accept human sacrifice. This was just a test to see, is Abraham going to use Isaac as a form of idolatry, or is he going to still worship Yahweh, even though Yahweh gave him Isaac? So then he goes and he gets tested. Nothing happens to Isaac. He's safe. It's fine. They find a ram in the thicket. But the point was, that's what James is trying to say in verse 21, is that Abraham, his father, was then justified by his work that followed up his belief, the belief that he had already verbally announced so long ago. That belief got tested with real life obedience, and Abraham passed that test both in his verbal confession of, oh, I believe your promise to me, with my act of obedience also believes your promise to me. So this is what James is trying to expound upon in James 2. So in verse 24 he says, you see that a person is justified by works and not by faith alone. So it's both to go hand in hand, just like Rahab. In the same way, Rahab, the prostitute, justified by works when she received the messengers and sent them out by another way. For as the body apart from the spirit is dead, so also faith apart from your obedience is dead, from your works is dead. And guys, if you look up this word in the Greek, this esklo, I think is what it's called, the word for works in James chapter 2, and you go into some of the deeper concordances, and like with the helps word studies and stuff, it says an action that validates your intent. So it's not just a word of you're going through the motions because you don't actually believe and have faith. No, it's saying if you believe and have faith, then this action has to validate your intent. This is a part of the Father saying, look, he wants to graft us in. He's going to graft in a whole bunch of people. We have examples in the Old Testament. These people interacting with Israel, getting grafted in. Their actions validated their intent of belief. It's a beautiful, beautiful concept, guys. We'll see Rahab at the resurrection. Beautiful stuff. Well, I really appreciate everybody joining me. Thanks for your patience. This has been a longer episode. We had some good callers, good questions, and hopefully you guys are having a good Shabbat. Hopefully it's been a blessing to you. If you liked it, share it with others. You guys are a blessing to be in the chat, and I want to thank everybody for joining me. So I'm just going through the chat. I don't see any other questions right now. All right, guys. I love you. I'll see y'all later.